and multi-country, high-level dialogue on silencing the guns. What does it mean to African people? And this is what is imperative about our gathering today in terms of focusing on countries. We are going to delve into the question of what does silencing the guns mean for African people? What does it mean for ordinary African people? And we will be listening to a couple of case studies today from South Sudan, Burundi, DRC, and Mali. But let me pause for a second and turn our minds to where we find ourselves today and the motivation and the reason behind this particular event. So I welcome each and every one of you. We now convene in a very different way, virtually. But fortunately for the virtual connection, we are still able to connect and dialogue about issues that confront our continent. 2020 has been a significant year for the world, for us in the women, peace and security area. And particularly because as we commemorated 20 years for UN Security Resolution 1325, and we commemorated the 25th year for the Beijing Platform for Action, Declaration and Action, we took time to take stock of where women are located in this conversation. And what is interesting is that the current pandemic space that we live and work in did not deter us from taking those moments to pause and really engage on these issues. But again, this was located within our African Union theme of silencing the guns by 2020. And silencing the guns by 2020 is a milestone, a goal, in terms of the aspirations that our heads of state, of government have adopted towards ensuring that they stay true to the pledge that they have made of not bequeathing the burden of conflicts to the next generation of Africans, and committed to end all wars in Africa by 2020. At the same time, we know how peace and not being able to achieve peace impacts on our development agenda. And 2020 reminded us of that. With the COVID-19 disruptions that we have seen that impact tremendously on our work, including not being able to convene together today and have this conversation. But it is the event that is being convened by the Special Envoy's Office for Women, Peace and Security. And allow me to pause and acknowledge Madam Binta Diop, our own Special Envoy for Women, Peace and Security, a long-standing champion in this area. And Madam Diop never likes us to say these things about her, but Africa has led in terms of appointing a special envoy for women, peace and security. And that again tells us about our foresight and leadership in this area. To Oxfam, Dr. Peter, for your joining us today, and the partnership that we continue to enjoy with you in this area. The Femmes Africa Solidarite, the institution that is convening us, also a long-standing civil society organization that started more than 20 years ago in this area, championing these issues of women, peace and security when it was not a fashion statement as it might be in the days that we are now. And then the Gender is My Agenda campaign, which has become the institutionalized platform for civil society to engage on the issues confronting them across thematic areas, but particularly under peace and security and where do women locate themselves. I want to particularly acknowledge the representation in terms of the African Union and Dr. Abdul Kader Arara, the coordinator on Silencing the Guns Unit in the African Union Commission. Very pleased to have you in here. And I consider these our he for she's, Peter, including yourself as well, when you can join us and be in this. And Madam Diop will be saying she leads peace, but you are one of those he for she's amongst us. Let me then also recognize Ambassador Salah Hamad, the acting head of the African Governance Architecture and Secretariat of the African Union. We are very pleased, Ambassador, also for you joining us. But we have come to understand that our struggle for the women, peace and security agenda will not be achieved without having very, very committed, I want to say comrades, I want to call you he for she's, but committed institutional leaders that also guide this agenda for where you are. So we recognize you today. We call on you to continue that commitment with us and to walk this journey as we proceed in this way. But what is the purpose of today's event? And today's event is particular in that it goes down to asking the question in terms of silencing the guns in Africa, what does this mean for African people? And we also know that the disparate ways in which conflict has impacted on our various countries requires us to take the agenda in a differentiated approach. And this is what this high-level meeting today does in terms of focusing it and convening it under the Silencing the Guns theme, is to take 4 countries in their case studies: South Sudan, Burundi, DRC, Mali, 4 countries that have also experienced conflicts after we've made this commitment to silencing the guns. And we will ask particular questions to these 4 countries and ask them to engage on it. So the dialogue objectives, and I will come back to that after I've allowed our keynote speakers and our opening address to take place, and then ask them to go on that. So without further ado, it is my absolute pleasure to invite he for she and Mr. Peter Kamalingan from Oxfam, the Pan African Program Director and resident representative of the African Union, but a very, very good partner and who has walked with us during this year when we've had to meet virtually and we've had to engage on this issue. So over to you, Mr. Peter.
Thank you very much, Praveen. I think that's a very good framing for the conversation. And I think that I want to acknowledge the representative of the member states who are here, the AU Commission representative as well, and the Office of the Special Envoy on Women's Peace and Security, with whom we very much as Oxfam appreciate the partnership we have and working together towards this high-level dialogue on silencing the guns. Of course, the Femmes Africa Solidarite, who are a very important partner in this journey, and Gender is My Agenda campaign, with whom we have organized the event, and also the representative of the Danish Embassy in Ethiopia and Mali. All protocols observed, ladies and gentlemen. I think this issue of women, peace and security, I'm sure all of us connect with this differently, but in many of our cases, it's a very personal issue. It's not something that is distant for women who are not here. Personally, I think it was, and I've shared this with the colleagues who are close to me, and it's what continues to drive me. It must have been in the 9th of March, 1986. I had lived in Uganda, which is my country, through the 70s, through the 80s, and experienced war in many ways. The worst of it was on that 9th of March, when a sister, my sister whom I was living with, because her house was next to the primary school I used to be, because our own home was several kilometers away. And I was staying with her, and there was an armed raid in the morning. And going through rape and eventually being killed was the sight I saw my sister. And and with a 3-month-old baby who was breastfeeding at that time when the mother was already dead. And so that has continued to be something that is personal. And this is the experience of so many of women, of people who struggle with wars and conflicts. And unfortunately, they are on the receiving end of these conversations. So these are very personal stories. It continues to inspire me, as I'm sure many of us. It's what drove me to do what I do, including the justification not to go and study peace and conflict in Austria many years. I started there because I wanted to make sure that we each, in any conversations in these webinars that we are in, we must be able to actually make it personal so that the passion and the energy can be driven from that perspective. It's not always as distant as it seems. And so I bring you greetings from us at Oxfam and welcome you to this meeting on silencing the gun, dialoguing on that, and particularly, as Pravin was saying, what this should mean for people and the people in this continent. We very much appreciate as Oxfam the African Union, of course, particularly the Office of the Special Envoy on Women, Peace and Security, through the leadership of Madame Pineta Diop. And then, of course, FAS, Femmes Africa, and GIMAC. GIMAC is a special entity. Leah, who is my team member, Leah, talks about GIMAC almost, 10 times or 20 times in a day in every conversation that we have. So GIMAC has a special place for us at Oxfam as well. And the Danish Embassy for supporting and working together with us in this journey as well. Today, as Oxfam, and together with those partners that I've mentioned, we are convening the first ever multi-stakeholder dialogue to reflect on this issue of silencing the gun, and as I said, what it means for the people. This is bringing together many stakeholders, many member states, the national policymakers. I see civil society organizations, the UN agencies as well, the regional and sub-regional institutions, people of practice, experts, and people very interested in peace building work, particularly women peace builders. I'm sure there are also private sector and knowledge leaders, academic institutions, coming together to deliberate on the implementation challenges of this ambition called silencing the guns in the respective countries, and formulating priorities and advocacy plans, particularly from those countries that Pravin mentioned, South Sudan, Burundi, DRC, and Mali. It's important that those are just case studies, but there are many, many countries that, of course, have much to share with us. This dialogue comes at a momentous period, as Pravin was saying, over the period of the 20 years anniversary of the UN Resolution 1325 on women, peace, and security. And we're reflecting on the implementation. And of course, the achievements and most importantly, the failures as well, the shortcomings at the different levels. We are hosting this dialogue, of course, very conveniently located within the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, which is crucial towards these efforts for advocating for protection of women and girls, and also other marginalized groups from conflict-related sexual violence. All this, of course, happening in a difficult year, this COVID year, which some of us wish it ends faster than it is at the moment. We acknowledge, of course, the efforts of, as I said, the efforts of the Special Envoy, and congratulate you all on the launch of the She Leads Peace campaign on women, peace and security in Africa, which aims to accelerate actions for peace in our continent. And as Oxfam, we echo this and support very much the She Leads Peace campaign, which is very much consistent and is in tandem with our own Oxfam I Matter campaign, which is an intersectional worldwide solidarity campaign working with women and girls in crisis and post-crisis context, recognizing the universality of the struggles and the experiences of women wherever they are in the world. This is supported by the documentary that I'm sure we'll share later today, that Oxfam and partners made on some of the voices of the frontline women that highlight the important role that women play and must play in building and keeping peace processes. We acknowledge the challenges that these frontline women in Africa face, from exclusion in leadership, key decision-making spaces, to exposure to the different forms of violence in their line of work. And this is why we very much appreciate the dialogue as a way of supporting inclusivity and amplifying the missing voices of these women frontliners, placing them at the center of it all as they share their lived experiences and formulating these prioritizations for the advocacy plans. As such, the dialogue affirms the representation and meaningful representation, I should add, of stakeholders and women peace builders from those countries whose case studies and stories we share today, discussing these perspectives on what all this means. The African Union, as outlined in its Agenda 2063, is very well aligned there, as I was reading, advocating for meaningful participation. I say meaningful participation and leadership of women and their efforts toward silencing the gun. These are all very much connected, of course, with issues of good governance, democracy, respect for human rights, justice and the rule of law, and peaceful and secure Africa. These are all very ideal aspirations, and all of us wish it became a reality sooner than later. But it's going to take effort, and that's why we applaud the efforts of everyone. I also know that in the Africa Peace and Security Architecture, those structures are built around objectives and principles and values and decision-making process that relate to the prevention, management, and resolution of crises and conflicts, post-conflict reconstruction and development in the continent. So overall, we as Oxfam believe that member states, and I hope I should probably underline, some member states are making progress implementing and engendering the national action plans on women, peace and security to protect and advance the rights of women and children in Africa. We know that there are some contexts, some countries that are not making as much progress, and that should concern us and should worry us. There are still many challenges in a number of countries, as we hear, and we really have to draw our eyeballs on those countries and continue without tiring to speak strongly to make sure that all of us bring whatever agency we can bring, whatever partnership and global solidarity, national solidarity, and most importantly, make sure that the women and girls who are affected most have their voices heard and are actually on the driving seat. So I want to appreciate once again the AU office, the Special Envoy on Women, Peace and Security, to thank Femmes Africa Solidarite and GIMAC and the Oxfam team as well, of course, my own team, Leah and Victor and others, and the countries and the partners that have been at the helm of organizing this event. On a special note, I would like to appreciate all of you who have made it to this event, including those who will join from the different parts of the continent and the world. I wish you all a fruitful and insightful deliberations, and I think that we can proceed from there. Thank you very much, Praveen. I hand it back to you.
Thank you very much, Peter, and thank you for the great collaboration, but also for reminding us that the personal is political, and for defining and sharing that story with us of how we arrive in these spaces to make it our passion and drive our own contributions to this better Africa that we dream and will see. I remain very, very optimistic that we will see it if we have this kind of energy. But I think also very important takeaway message from you, and in the focus on why, Madam Diop, that the national consultations and hearing of the what does the silencing the guns and the women, peace and security agenda mean to the African people is about bringing the missing voice to the dialogue. And that is, your good takeaway for us, reminding us that the dialogue is about amplifying the missing voice. And that is what we want to carry from here forward. Thank you for putting us into perspective, for leading us into the conversation and the dialogue. For those of you who are still joining us, and we are on Facebook Live, just to say that we had expected only 50 participants, but we are now oversubscribed at 75. And that in itself tells you how timely, how important this discussion is. And let us acknowledge the Acting Director, Ms. Kumba Fall at FAS, for her efforts also in working to bring this initiative on the eve of the extraordinary summit on silencing the guns that will take place in, I want to say couple of days, but couple of hours basically. And that this kind of conversation also feeds those high-level discussions just by bringing the different speakers to me. Let me now turn on to our invited guests and invite Mr. Abdul Qadir Aura, coordinator on Silence the Guns unit at the African Union Commission, a long-standing partner, also someone we call a he for she, to deliver the message for us from the Peace and Security. Over to you, sir. Please unmute yourself.
Sorry. Thank you very much. Thank you, Pravina, for the invitation, for the opportunity, for the introduction. And first of all, let me also acknowledge the presence of our leader, Madame Bineta Diop, notre très chère sœur, très chère amie. Elle est toujours disponible et on doit à elle beaucoup de gratitude pour le travail qu'elle a fait depuis 2010 ou depuis ce dollar, mais renforcement du rôle des femmes. Et grâce à elle, je pense que nous sommes aujourd'hui réunis dans cette réunion. Donc, merci pour votre leadership, madame. Donc, je dis, Excellences, mesdames et messieurs, c'est pour moi un grand plaisir de prendre la parole devant vous à l'occasion de ce dialogue. Et avant tout, je tiens à remercier et féliciter GIMAC, FAS, Oxfam pour l'organisation de cette importante rencontre qui intervient à un point de moment. Elle intervient au moment où le continent se mobilise, une fois de plus, pour faire de cette ambition de faire taire les armes en Afrique une réalité. Je pense que toute l'Afrique tout entière attend avec intérêt, voire avec espoir, les décisions de nos chefs d'État et de gouvernement réunis le 6 décembre 2020 dans un sommet extraordinaire pour renouveler leur engagement et donner une nouvelle impulsion à ce projet. Comme vous le savez, l'agenda 2063 de l'Union africaine prend l'intégration, la prospérité et la paix en Afrique. Il traduit la volonté politique de nos dirigeants d'instaurer la paix, la stabilité, la sécurité, de promouvoir le développement économique, social et culturel et d'accélérer le processus d'intégration africaine. De plus, le plan décennal de la mise en œuvre de l'agenda 2063 souligne l'impératif de mettre fin à toutes les guerres, aux conflits civils, à la violence sexiste, aux conflits violents et de prévenir la génocide. Je pense dans cet esprit que le programme Faire taire les armes en Afrique avait été adopté lors de la commémoration des 50aires de l'Organisation de l'Unité africaine, Union africaine, en mai 2013, comme un projet phare visant à renforcer les efforts de mobilisation des États membres de l'Union africaine et des communautés économiques régionales et puis, bien sûr, de toute la société civile afin de mettre fin au conflit à travers la promotion de la culture de la paix, la bonne gouvernance et contribuer bien sûr au développement socio-économique du continent. Le programme de silence et d'égance, et au-delà, ça veut dire de la résolution des conflits existants, vise des objectifs socio-économiques qui requièrent la contribution de chaque secteur de l'activité sociale pour contribuer à la prévention des conflits. La prévention est importante dans cet exercice. Donc, et je pense que ces objectifs ne pourront être atteints que si chacun de nous doit y contribuer, chacun de nous. À cet égard, le Conseil de paix et de sécurité, comme vous le savez, a développé en 2017 la feuille de route de l'Union africaine sur les étapes pratiques pour faire taire les armes en Afrique à l'horizon de 2020, qui a été articulée sur 5 aspects. Les aspects politiques, les aspects économiques, les aspects sociaux, les aspects environnementaux et les aspects juridiques. Et à partir de là, le département de paix et de sécurité a pris le relais comme un organe de mise en œuvre des décisions des organes politiques qui est l'Assemblée, qui est la conférence des chefs d'État et du Conseil de paix et de sécurité, d'entreprendre plusieurs activités permettant notamment, ça veut dire la vulgarisation de l'agenda faire taire les armes à travers le continent. Donc, je pense que nous avons mis l'accent dans cet exercice beaucoup sur les femmes et les jeunes, parce qu'ils sont les acteurs les plus importants, c'est-à-dire pour la durabilité des solutions. C'est ça, si on cherche des solutions de short terme ou bien qui règlent les symptômes des conflits, c'est facile. Mais le problème, on doit s'attaquer aux causes profondes. C'est ça. Donc, et je pense qu'il n'y a pas mieux acteur bien placé pour ces solutions durables que les femmes et les jeunes. Donc, la plupart de nos actions a été axée sur les femmes et les jeunes. Bien sûr, dans plusieurs, ça veut dire, régions de notre continent, notamment les pays que vous avez cités, Mali, Soudan du Sud, Burundi et autres. Donc, on observe plusieurs phénomènes qui contribuent à l'éruption ou bien à l'aggravation des conflits. Nous avons maintenant en Afrique, le premier, ça veut dire, phénomène, c'est la circulation des armes. On compte maintenant en Afrique presque 40 millions d'armes en Afrique. Et seulement 15% de ces 40 millions est légal. L'autre, le reste, c'est illégal. C'est porté par les bandistes, par les groupes criminels et tout ça. Donc là, c'est un danger. C'est un grand danger pour le continent. L'autre chose, c'est l'expansion, ça veut dire des groupes terroristes et des criminels, notamment dans les pays dans le Sahel. Maintenant, le Mali, notamment le Mali. Donc, j'espère pouvoir écouter des participants qui viennent, ça veut dire des grounds, des terrains ici, comment, ça veut dire, les choses se passent chez eux. C'est important d'écouter la société civile du Mali. Aussi, nous avons le recrutement maintenant, malheureusement, des jeunes, parce que les jeunes n'ont pas de travail. Donc, les groupes terroristes et criminels ont remplacé l'État dans quelques territoires qui ne sont pas contrôlés par les institutions étatiques. Et ça veut dire qu'ils donnent l'emploi, ils donnent l'argent, ils donnent le food, l'alimentation, tout ça, incite les gens à rejoindre les groupes terroristes. Et ça aussi, c'est un phénomène inquiétant pour nous. Nous avons maintenant des violences entre les communautés, notamment au Sahel. Ça, c'est un phénomène aussi nouveau, mais qui vraiment pèse beaucoup sur la stabilité de nos pays. Bien sûr, on doit ajouter maintenant, ça veut dire la Covid, on doit parler de Covid. Comment Covid, ça veut dire a entravé nos efforts pour la médiation et la prévention des conflits. Et là, on doit penser maintenant à l'autre médiation. Si Mme Binta Diop ne peut pas se déplacer au Burundi, comment elle peut, ça veut dire, renforcer les gens sur place, la médiation locale? C'est ça, par exemple, c'est parmi les choses qu'on doit exploiter cette réunion. Ça veut dire les locaux, la communauté locale et des jeunes, trouver des jeunes, les former, c'est-à-dire en cas où il y a les pays sont fermés, ça veut dire qu'on doit confier à ces jeunes-là, à ces femmes-là, la mission de médiation. Donc, je ne vais pas dire beaucoup de choses, donc, parce que je pense qu'on a 5 minutes pour parler, donc, et beaucoup de choses ont été dites par notre frère Peter. Mais moi, je voudrais dire à la fin, c'est-à-dire, outre le travail remarquable et mondialement reconnu de Mme Binta Diop dans l'émancipation des femmes, donc nous avons ici au département lancé d'autres initiatives ou bien programmes pour renforcer le rôle des jeunes, notamment des jeunes femmes dans la médiation. Et là, je parle de FemmeWise, dont Mme Binta Diop était l'initiateur et continue toujours à former nos jeunes femmes médiatrices. Aussi, nous avons lancé un autre programme qui est Youth for Peace, les ambassadeurs pour la paix. Ça, c'est important aussi. Et on commence maintenant à avoir de l'impact, notamment sur les réseaux sociaux et tout ça. Donc, je ne vais pas tarder, mais je pense qu'il y a beaucoup d'entre vous qui connaissent la révolution algérienne, parce que je suis algérien. Il y a un héros algérien qui s'appelle Arbi Bremhedi. C'est un martyr. Donc, quand on a commencé la guerre contre les Français, donc il était un peu, ça veut dire un peu de gens, un petit nombre. Et puis, on a demandé comment ça veut dire on va pouvoir lutter contre les soldats français, tout ça, avec un petit. Et le monsieur, elle a dit une chose, et là, on doit peut-être suivre la même approche. Il a dit, confie la révolution au peuple et l'amènera à la victoire. Donc, c'est ça, c'est à partir de ça, et nos martyrs, nos héros africains et founding fathers et tout ça, on continue toujours à apprendre, malgré la technologie que nous avons, malgré Facebook, malgré Twitter, tout ça, ils avaient vraiment, parce qu'ils portent à cœur, avec bonne foi et tout ça, les objectifs. Donc, je vous remercie.
Thank you very much, Mr. Abdelkader Arora. On that note of giving the revolution to the people are going to take the revolution in today's dialogue forum and definitely be the leaders on the Silencing the Guns initiative in Africa. So thank you very much for also underscoring a number of the initiatives, reminding us of the importance of the intersection of youth, of women, reminding us of other programs that we are involved in, and we are very grateful for that input into the conversation today. Without much delay, let me then invite Ambassador Saleh Hamad, the acting head of the African Governance Architecture, the Secretary of the African Union, and also another he for she. Ambassador, thank you very much for all the contributions that you make to this area and highlighting this issue. I know that also closely when the Special Envoy requires doors to tap on, these are some of the doors that she's able to come to and help us advance the policy as well as the advocacy and the changes that we require. Thank you so much for joining us. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Your Excellency, Madam Binta Diop, AU Special Envoy on Women, Peace and Security, Your Excellencies, representative of AU member states, representatives of African Union organs and institutions with a mandate on human and people's rights, representatives of African national human rights institutions, representative of UN agencies, representatives of civil society, non-governmental organizations, academia, and media. And here, let me single out GIMAC, Accord, and Oxfam for their contribution to the organization of this program. Colleagues from the African Union Commission, in particular, colleagues from Silencing the Guns Unit, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol duly observed. I'm honored and delighted to be with you today as part of this opening ceremony of this multi-country high-level dialogue on silencing the guns. And it's an honor to always be part of a program that is organized or honored with the presence of Her Excellency, the AU Women Envoy on Peace and Security, Madame Beneta Diop. She bestowed on me the title of a he for she, which is an honor that I will always be proud of. And that honor made me also change my title from just a human rights expert to experts on human rights and gender. As the head of the African Governance Architecture Secretariat of the African Union, I had the opportunity to oversee and participate in the development of the Women Empowerment Strategy, which is a research program and a strategy that sought to address the lack of women participation in governance and peace and security. As a result of this strategy, we came to understand the importance of the nexus of governance, good governance, peace and security, and development. But it was very clear that the challenges facing African women, meaningful participation in the advancement of good governance, democracy, and peace and security agenda in Africa have largely been attributed to the gaps between policies, strategies, and their implementation at the national level. This has further been worsened by institutional capacity gaps and inadequate budgetary allocations to support and scale up effective evidence-based women programs. Further to this, socioeconomic inequalities continue to have a negative structural impact on the abilities of women to play active roles in the peacemaking and peace-building processes in Africa. Moreover, capacity gaps at national, regional, and continental levels in implementing normative frameworks, such as the African Women Protocol, the African Charter on Democracy, Elections, and Governance, as well as the limited capacity of women organizations and to effectively engage with decision makers, continue participation at all levels is slowing down the creation of Africa. Specifically, young women and girls continue to face many challenges alongside their male counterparts. Similarly, sociocultural and economic exclusions continue to manifest in the form of limited women access to the opportunity for recovery from the effects of violence, the ability to get redress for human rights abuses, and the opportunity to participate in reforming laws and public institutions in post-conflict situations. Despite these challenges, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Africa's growing women leadership is characterized by great potential, skillfulness, resourcefulness, resilience, and aspirations. Today, African women are increasingly claiming their rightful place as peace leaders as well as agents for change. Women prominently contributing to the efforts that are aiming at silencing the guns in Africa and implementing Agenda 2063, the blueprint for building the Africa we want, the Africa we deserve. However, in order to move ahead with building the new generations of women leadership in Africa, it is important to, one, institutionalize platforms for women engagements and participation, create special programs, projects that are by women for women, supported by AU member states at the national levels, provide capacity building programs for women across the board, ensure intergenerational exchange, knowledge generation and information sharing among women networks and women organizations, build strong women networks and strategic partnership and alliances, ensure participation of women in policy formulation and implementation of global and continental instruments. Once again, we should never overemphasize the role of women leadership in governance as well as peace building and peacemaking. Once again, thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this important dialogue, and I wish you fruitful deliberations and successful discussions. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, and also thank you for giving us guidance that this new generation needs to focus on institutionalizing platforms, requires to look at special projects by women for women. A good message for us in terms of going forward, capacity building progress across the board. So these are very, very insightful comments, and for reminding us that we need to redouble our efforts. Yes, progress has been made, and the local. Let's also focus on those institutions at a local level that will be relevant in this space. So I really thank you, and we continue to count on your support going forward. We're very pleased to hear gender attached to your title, which means that we have carried you with us, and you will carry us with you. So much appreciation, Ambassador. Thank you so much. It is now my absolute privilege and pleasure to call upon Her Excellency, Madam Binta Diop, who's the Special Envoy on Women, Peace and Security at the African Union Commission. Madam Diop, for many of us, and has been our mentor, has been the giant on whose shoulders we stand as we have defined our work and our space and to make our contributions. This year is no different, but you've also seen an extraordinary effort from her, going almost at I don't know what speed to deliver what this year has brought to us. So we have been meeting under very difficult circumstances and with the COVID-19 context. But in these many milestones around the Women, Peace and Security agenda that we have been commemorating this year, a highlight was the launch in terms of just a few weeks ago, the Women, Peace and Security Forum. And this dialogue forum that has been led by the Special Envoy's Office, a very successful event, the launch of the campaign on She Leads Peace, keeping all of us focused on the particular condition of women in a COVID-19 context. And shortly after the pandemic ravaged through the continent and we started to experience lockdown measures and the various attempts to deal with both the health and the economic crisis as well as the social crisis, Madam Diop was quick to assemble the leaders in this area, the foreign ministers, the high-level representatives, the African Women Leaders Network, FemWise, the various institutions have been mobilized and brought around the issue to remind ourselves that such an event should not allow us to lose the gains we have made, but starkly to remind us how this impacts on women differently, and have we prepared ourselves for this different agenda. So very much a champion, a leader in the space, not afraid to roll her own sleeves up. And we have seen this, and many of us here in this room, across the continent, those of you joining us live, all 85 participants in here, know this from Madam Diop. Let me also say that the very civil society network, GIMAC, that has located itself as the mechanism or the platform at which civil society engages to be a watchdog to the African Union and the REX. She has been the person that had been amongst the founders or the founding leader right back then, over 20 years ago. So Madam Diop, it then makes no, it's without even a thought that you would lead this conversation on what does it mean to African people. There's no surprise that you will join us today as we reflect on this. So allow me to invite Madam Diop to deliver the opening remarks. Over to you, Madam Diop.
Oh, thank you, Madam Moderator, for this long introduction. But let me also recognize you, Pravina, Madam Moderator, for your leadership as well as on your own rights. You have been part of this movement. So thank you for the kind introduction, and thank Accord, who is also leading the team on silencing the gun within GIMAC. So allow me to stand on the existing protocol that you have started with at the beginning, but recognizing a few of my brothers and sisters, Excellency Ambassador Salah Ahmad, the acting head of Africa Governance Architecture. And I said, I name it a he for she, because I see with the Commissioner Minata Samate, every time that he has been with us, I have traveled with him to Gambela to sit down with the refugee at that between South Sudan and Ethiopia and see the work that they have been doing. So thank you, Ambassador, for being a he for she. But also let me, my brother Abdelkader Arau, you know, Abdelkader has been at the AU, very silent at the back, but very efficient, very efficient. I think most of our instrument on peace and security, it has been the backbone of those instruments. So thank you for your continued support, because silencing the gun have been supporting really the unit, supporting the GIMAC, and you know, we seeing you here is a testimony that the silencing the gun will continue to interact with civil society, because this is very important, get their voice and get their face. So thank you for being with them today. And that's part of our work. So thank you. And I think the GIMAC and FAS, you could see that I could never do this kind of work that you are all applauding, not me, because it's your work, it's you who have done it. I would not have done it if there was not the support of these men that you call the he for she, because without them, I don't think that we can achieve what we have achieved on gender equality right now. But you will tell me we need to continue and a lot need to be done as well. But I wanted really to recognize them here. Recognizing also another men who have experienced a lot of, as he has said, Peter Kamalundin, and Peter is a director, program director, and representative of Oxfam to the African Union, the Pan African representation. And thank you, Peter, because today I have learned what you have experienced, what you have witnessed, and understand better your engagement now. Why, you know, after leaving that, and I can tell you my passion is just because I have also maybe not experienced, but witnessed such horrible things happening to the women in Africa, that we get our engagement and our commitment. So let me also recognize, Pravina, the women that are making this program happening right now. I will, and also Victoria Maloka, the acting director of the gender of the African Union, WGDD. Victoria, welcome. I know that you are going to speak, you know, to listen and to speak at one stage, but thank you for always being available and supporting the women, especially the GIMAC as well. I know that UN Women must be around, but I want to recognize also our sister of UN Women that have been supporting us all along. And Madame Kumba Falben of Femmes Africa Solidarite, but also Mata Mutesi from Fawe. I know that we are all connected today. So I would say all our sisters from South Sudan, I will recognize you. And, you know, Minister Betty, I think you are sitting there. I know our sister from DRC, Mama Faida. I know Meto Saran from Mali. I know our sister from Burundi, Catherine, and others. All of you are representing your country in this webinar. And I said all protocol observed. I might forget some of you, and but also the partners that you have named, which is the Danish that are with us today. So let me start by really congratulating the organizers and those who are coming from the country. And I think that this dialogue is another opportunity on our advocacy. And you remind us, Pravina, that it is a year for 1325 20th anniversary, 25th anniversary of Beijing Platform. So indeed, as we all said in the previous speakers, women are critical actors in attaining the goal to silence the gun. I think even if head of state are going to talk this weekend and look at their aspiration and review them, as Abdelkader have said, without the women, I think they will not attain the durable peace. And I think that is where we have to take the conversation. If it is silencing the gun, fine, but the process of silencing the gun and the durable have to come from the population and from the women. So I think that's with this conviction that despite the COVID-19, that we decided also to look at 1325, the Women, Peace and Security Agenda, what it has done in the Africa context. So we have dedicated the year in consultation. We have said many consultations regarding this agenda with member states, because I think the most important is those who are implementing or leading the implementation are our member states, to see if they are accountable to the commitment, civil society organization, women peace builders, youth peace ambassadors, centers of excellence, members of FemWise who are mediators, women refugee, and women peacekeepers. And we launched, as you know, the She Lead Peace campaign for the women and the men to come and speak out on the issues of silencing the gun as well. I think this consultation and the campaign led to the first Africa Forum on Women, Peace and Security. And we need to make sure that it continues to federate all our efforts. You know, I think at the end of the day, even the forum resolved to be an annual gathering. It will happen every year to bring every stakeholders around the table to measure progress enhance accountability, and deliver on the promises of the WPS. I think today, this consultation that we are having today will provide the space to amplify the contribution of the women at the front line. I think you target 4 countries, but I think their voice will help us also to enhance the forum, the global forum in the context, in the Africa context. The outcome of the deliberation will form part of the WPS forum call to action to escalate further our efforts and request to convene. You know, the call have really call of action have requested to convene a peace summit led by women with the participation and support of our head of state and government. It was done by South Africa. The Minister of Foreign Affairs made the appeal that we need to have this kind of dialogue at the summit level to make sure that, you know, the issue on violence against women, women participation, all these have to be discussed by the men, in particular by our leaders. That's one of the resolution of the forum, and it has been echoed by, as we say, the Musa Faki Mohammed, the chairperson of the African Union Commission himself, after listening to the women and their call. And I'm sure that with the support of our brother here present, that such a discussion will happen. Victoria is also here because the discussion went to the ministers of gender. She will speak about it. And the Minister of Gender has also adopted to make sure that we have that such a summit that would discuss really the issue of women, peace, and security in the continent. I think this is because of all your efforts that this will, this such a summit will take place, and your voice will be heard at the highest level. And I thank again the Peace and Security Department for talking about what have been done at the AU Peace and Security Council, because I think they continue to monitor the situation and are also doing the necessary action, target action to bring peace and stability in this continent. But as we said, a lot needs to be done further. When I look at the country that you have presented, myself in South Sudan, I congratulate them because I participate recently, invited by the dialogue. I participated in the dialogue and issue a statement in front of and Betty Ugwaro was there, and make sure that the discussion happening in South Sudan, we are part and parcel to support the women's agenda. I was there in solidarity mission with Amina Mohammed, and we met with all the leaders and the women of South Sudan, and we continue to monitor the situation in South Sudan. In Eastern Congo as well, I'm happy to see that our sisters that are working in East Congo, I was there and inaugurated one of the stop center of victims of violence by the women themselves, and I congratulate them to continue to look into the issue of reconstruction for the women in the East Congo. And of course, in Mali, we are measuring the progress, the Auli national chapters, but other women leaders are contributing to bringing solution in the dialogue right now in Mali, but in the transition, but post-transition, to make sure that women participate meaningfully. So as we said, the glass is half full and half empty. Nevertheless, I think that we need to continue to mobilize. As it was said by my brother, to say that, you know, maybe 2-3 people cannot defeat the war, but the people themselves together can defeat the war. And I think if we continue to mobilize, you know, and the women at the front line, we will make Africa a better place for all of us to be. As I conclude, let me again take the opportunity to thank all my sister and brother here present, Victoria, as I see you, Dr. Butera, who are at the back, you know, those who organize it, Dr. Butera and Ellen from my office, but also let me also talk about Leah. You know, Peter, Leah have been at the front, at the back, but we want to recognize her as well. So all the GIMAC members, Pravina, congratulations to you and to Fawi and to the Secretariat as well. So let me really thank all the participants here present. Ambassador Salah, thank you for your great remark. And also Abdelkader and the team of Silencing the Gun Unit. I know that Umu might be with you today and other participants. So thank you for mobilizing all the department. So thank you, GIMAC Steering Committee, Faz Kumba and her team, Elisa, and I know Udase, and the Young Women Network, GIMAC Network. Thank you for your support, and I wish you all fruitful deliberation. I will be with you. I am listening, and if any contribution are needed, we will be there to accompany you. So thank you for associating my office, the Office of the Special Envoy, in this discussion. Thank you very much. Merci.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Diop, for setting the tone, for helping contextualize the activity, but for also bringing into perspective the intersection of all of these pieces as we try to redouble our efforts, but also connect our various efforts under very strong leadership. So to Mr. Peter Kamalingan, to Mr. Abdul Kader Arara, to Ambassador Saleh Hamad, and to Her Excellency Madam Binta Diop, thank you very much for your time today and for this opening session and the contributions and setting the tone for this very timely discussion, but this multi-country high-level dialogue on silencing the guns and what does it mean to African people. We will now go into session one. We are slightly behind time, like almost a half an hour behind time, but this is very important discussion, so we will find a way to make up the time, and we really ask you to bear with us while we do this. So the session now is on targeting the case studies of specific countries, and we are focusing on the South Sudan, Burundi, DRC, and Mali. And for the discussions on South Sudan in particular, what is it that we want to achieve? The objectives of our dialogue on the South Sudan contribution is to discuss and engage women peace builders and detail recommendations to the AU, IGAD, international community, and South Sudanese government on the nexus between security sector reform, demobilization, disarmament and reintegration, and transitional justice as a pathway to transition from conflict to peace. So that's the theme around which we have looked at the session on South Sudan. And I'll go through the objectives for each session as we go so that we can remind ourselves that this is the compass by which we're trying to calibrate our inputs. With those few comments, let me remind you to put your questions into the Q&A points. Please tweet whatever you can from here, and let us share beyond here this very timely discussion that is taking place. Elisa, may I hand over to you for the short video that we have, and then I will go ahead and invite our speakers.
Thank you, Pravina. If we are ready to go, thank you. Hello, Keith. There is no audio.
So Keith, I'm still not hearing an audio. Elisa, are you hearing an audio?
There is no audio, Pravina, from my side.
There's no audio. Okay. So Keith, can I ask then, will it be okay if we continue, or can we give you 2 minutes, Keith? Please bear with us, colleagues. We are working in a virtual format, and you know that in a virtual format, it requires us to have a slight bit more patience on these initiatives. And I know that the team did test it before we went in, so it's not any fault of theirs. So Keith, can we try one more time? And then if not, we will try and show it at the end of the panel. Keith, can I get any indication from you?
Pravina, this is Kumba speaking. I propose
Hi,
that
Kumba.
you continue.
Okay. Keith, maybe
we'll come back to you for the film.
Okay.
Thank you.
Keith, there is everybody giving you advice on what to do here in the chat room. So maybe we take some advice and unmute yourself. So I think you are mute. So can we just, all of you, all of us, can we be a bit patient? Just let's give it a few minutes to not allow the moment to pass us. So Keith, if you give it to us and you unmute yourself and we start again, let's try it.
Okay, if Keith, you can't do it from your side, probably I'll try to share my screen and try to play it from my side, and if people can confirm whether they can hear it.
Okay, let's try that, Elisa.
Art scene, but now more South Sudanese are finding creative inspiration in even the grimmest of times.
Sexual violence rates remain high, and some 50% of rape victims are under the age of 15. The mother of 3 believes women officers are uniquely qualified to help the victims.
Islamist groups like Ansar Dine and Majal imposed a harsh system of Sharia law in northern cities like Gao and Timbuktu, banning everything from booze and cigarettes to music and dancing.
Human Rights Watch said on Thursday that security forces in the Democratic Republic of Congo killed at least 34 people during protests this week against President Joseph Kabila's failure to step down at the end of his mandate.
They traveled from across the country to the capital Khartoum, where the accord was signed. Many gathered at the newly renamed Freedom Square, once the site of protest rallies against the former President Omar al-Bashir.
I was training women in political participation. What are the challenges? How can we succeed to put more women in politics for them to succeed? Because at that time it was during Madam Eddie Justice Serif time. We have 18 government ministries. At the time, only 3 were occupied with women. The rest of the 15 were also men. So our key was to promote women into politics, into leadership at all levels. They always put the women in the kitchen to go buy and cook. And the women feel complacent that small cash should be left for them to have meal for the next day. So we were on that campaign. We said we are more than what you feel you are. What a man can do, women can do it and even do it more better. So you have equal rights just as the men have.
Searching for glory.
Do not allow the men to pull you.
In the life I
No longer men in front, the women at the back. Together we will work side by side, side by side. That was our slogan for the election. And at the same time, we're using the Women in Peace Building Network to display placards and posters bearing peaceful messages. You know, have a peaceful election, vote your choice, vote right, don't vote right. We engage political party leaders, the first 5 political party institutions, CDC, United Party, ALP, UP, ANC, we engage them. My institution, the West African Network for Peace Building, did an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding for Peace, to sustain and maintain the peace. For them to sign, if you did not win election, you should respect the rule of law.
When I'm running, I'm cold when I'm burning. Oh.
Art is very powerful. There is no revolution, intellectual that happens without artists at the center of it. Art breaks down traditional boundaries that have caused us as South Sudanese division. And that's why there is so much power in art, and it's so unifying. I think it's one of the few things, it's one of the things that we could collectively agree on as South Sudanese.
Aux élections de 2011, je me dis non, je ne vais plus être candidate, et j'étais dans une mission d'observation électorale. J'ai conduit une mission d'observation électorale. Nous étions plusieurs groupes. Donc c'était l'observation nationale où il y avait des groupes, nous on représentait les femmes, il y avait les jeunes, il y avait les confessions religieuses, mais c'était quand même une mission de près de 10 000 personnes. Donc nous avons vraiment eu une expertise par rapport aux élections et à la construction de la paix à travers des élections.
I'm telling stories in the song I sing, searching for glory in the life I live.
Il y a aussi que nous essayons de faire comprendre aux communautés qu'ils ont beaucoup plus intérêt à régler leurs différends par le dialogue que par la violence. Voilà ce que nous faisons, mais nous partons vers la communauté. Quand il y a des problèmes entre les communautés, nous nous déplaçons. Nous nous déplaçons pour aller sur le terrain, nous nous déplaçons pour essayer de mettre les communautés ensemble, pour discuter avec eux, chercher à savoir quel est leur problème, et ensemble nous trouvons la solution, parce que nous ne sommes pas des génies pour trouver automatiquement une solution à un problème. Il faut que les protagonistes nous posent leurs problèmes, et ensemble nous discutons ensemble pour pouvoir trouver la solution. Voilà ce que nous faisons.
Women were too many, literally, like to the point where the people from the ex-regime, they were saying this is only like a women protest to try to undermine protest. For me, it's very debatable. Like I wanted to say it in a more simple way, not to sound very sophisticated, but I feel the analysis for me is that women were so oppressed by the previous regime. Like, we are progressing, but the way we are progressing is not similar. It's unfair. Like, women are still going to school, women are still the ones that are paying for the household in many cases, but the community is not as progressive with them. The only striking thing for me that if women are talking about the values of democracy, of freedom, rights, it's okay, but whenever women take it to the next level and they try to take it to the personal level and say, we want more freedom, we want to be on the tables, we want to be in the government, and then this is when the clash happens. People are resistant, people are saying, okay, you're not, why are you talking about this now? This is not important. So it's just always like, yes, it was beautiful. Women were more. Women were actually sleeping at the sit-in. But then when you come to the reality, it's something very conflicting that I feel we're starting the race from a bit of steps ahead. Like, we should be all in the line of democracy, but this is not the case. Women are still starting from the back. Even the gains that they got are still not putting them in the same place as everyone else. So the battle continues. Like, the prime ministers have given a lot of promises that now the state will be better looking at women, that will reform the laws, but we'll see. But I can't deny it, that women in the process, they were legendary.
The future you speak of is here. The hour of harvest is near. I'm telling stories in the song I sing, searching for glory in the life I lead, to help me dream the future that I see, to make come true billionaire dream.
Thank you very much, and really an inspirational video to whet our appetite, to begin to hear what is it that we will be listening to, the kind of insights, the kind of methodologies that are being used at where it matters is what we're talking about. So without much, let me then invite, is Mr. Edmund Yakani with us? Edmund? You are there? So Edmund, so let me introduce the panel and then I will call on each speaker. So we have three panelists for the session on South Sudan. The first panelist is Edmund Yakani. He's the Executive Director and Community Empowerment for Progress Organization in South Sudan. His presentation is the report on the nexus between security sector reform, demobilization, disarmament, reintegration, and transitional justice. Then we have Ms. Agoyoko Adwok, and you heard her in the video talking about young people's perspectives on silencing the guns in South Sudan and the use of art. And then Ms. Honorable Betty Ogwario, who's the chairperson of the South Sudan's Consortium of Women Organization, and how the national dialogue is complementary to the peace agreement in South Sudan and how they resonate to the grassroots effort. And all these conversations are really important for the point that we have robust policy commitments on the inclusion of women, of where women matter, how it impacts on women, but now turning the lens on what happens at the level, at the local level. Allow me to call my first speaker, Mr. Edmund Yakani. Are you there, Edmund? Elisa, can you help me? Is Edmund in?
Okay, he was connected.
Has he dropped? Okay, let me then move to Agiedo Adwok, and then I will come back to Edmund at the end. I will do Agiedo Adwok. Over to you, Agiedo.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Good afternoon, everybody. I would like to observe the protocol, if it allows. Today, I want to discuss young people's perspective in silencing guns in South Sudan. As you all know, South Sudan is a country that has experienced civil war for more than, in total is more than 50 years, basically. That means that there's basically been a generation of youth who have grown up just knowing the language of war and not even the language of peace. We had a short period of, rejoice when we had independence, and then shortly after, we had another civil war. And so basically you've had a huge chunk of youth who are fighting, this war. So you have a generation, that is my father's generation, that fought the first and the second civil war. And now you have a generation, basically people my age, who are now currently fighting this current war. And that cannot go on. We cannot, talk about silencing of guns in Africa when we're not really tackling the issue of governance, governance and especially in the case of fragile states such as South Sudan are intimately linked. They not only just hamper, development or economic progress. It basically essentially means that there's a huge generation, of young people who have their dreams shattered. So I think there is an important need to not only just include youth voices when it comes to, political processes or peace processes, as we always see, but there's actually a need to engage with them in such a way that it's not just that we're ticking boxes and saying that, oh yes, we need the youth involved, but what are you actually doing to ensure that the youth are actually involved, especially in silencing the guns in the continent. Another thing that I believe is very important is that we cannot talk about, armed conflict is a cause and consequence of state fragility. So we cannot talk about, solving conflict when we are not actually addressing the root causes. So basically what happens is that every time we have peace processes, we're told we only need the actors involved. And in most cases, what happens is that, like what happened with the IGAD process in Addis, was that there were not youth involved. And what we were asking and what we stated was that there is an important need not just to include youth as an afterthought, but you actually need them involved in the process of peace building and actually conflict, mitigation. So I believe that, in our attempts to silence the guns, the conversation has to be anchored around the contribution of, governance in preventing, managing, and resolving conflicts. So I think the best way you can silence guns, especially in Africa, is that you have to prevent the conflicts from taking place. And to prevent the conflict from taking place, in the case of South Sudan, it means that you have to address the issue of governance. And then I also believe that the linkages between, governance and conflict cannot be taken for granted. So if you look at it in most cases, like if I could give the case of South Sudan, is that one of the cause of the actual conflict that's going on right now was, the fight for political power. And so you had the state actors basically fighting each other to try and dominate. And so what essentially has happened is that now you have a very polarized South Sudanese society that is divided along ethnic lines. And then within even these ethnic lines, you have sectarianism where different groups of, individuals are basically fighting each other. And so I believe that unless, we address this issue of governance, to me, I think we're just wasting time. We need to have an honest dialogue. Why are those conflicts happening in Africa? We're talking about silencing the guns, yes, but that just ends up as a rhetoric. In most cases, we've had several meetings and several, statements being put out that we have to stop the violence. But what are you seeing right now in the Horn of Africa is that, be it in Ethiopia, be it in Somalia, be it in South Sudan, be it right now as we see what's happening in Uganda as well. You're seeing leaders who are unable to recognize that, their time is over and that it is time for the next generation of young people to take power. And essentially, what does it mean? It means that you have to acknowledge that these people actually have something to contribute. But if we can't acknowledge that young people in Africa actually have something to contribute, then essentially what we're doing is that we're not harnessing a constituency of people who actually are wealth, because the continent is a very young continent, over 70% youth, yet there isn't any effective program around their livelihood. What are governments actually doing when it comes to programs around inclusion of youth? We are simply being told, no, you're still young, it's not your time, you have to wait. So how can we actually have generational entry, especially when it comes to political processes, when we are being told that you have to wait? We have to wait until when? So I believe in the case of South Sudan, the fact that it's just not only like a militarized society, essentially, if you're talking about good governance, you have to fully demilitarize. You have to take the guns from the hands of young people. Because essentially what happens is that because politicians do not want to be held accountable, they don't have any programs in place for these young people. What do? So these young people essentially are vulnerable. They suffer from poverty, there's ignorance, there's illiteracy. So I really think we need an honest dialogue around governance, because we can't talk about silencing the guns without addressing these core fundamental issues of governance and failed leadership in the continent, and especially in the case of South Sudan, and the need to acknowledge that the only way that we can move forward, yes,
Ms. Adok, I'm going to ask you to wrap up for us. I'll give you another minute to wrap up.
Yes, so basically, we talk about the legacies of civil war. In the case of South Sudan, you have basically now a militarized society. What we need to do is that we need to fully demilitarize. Silencing the gun means that we have to demilitarize our society, we have to demilitarize our politics, and we have to take the guns from the youth. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And I hate to cut you in like that, but just because we have so many to go through in terms of hearing this rich experience. But thank you for the link in terms of governance and conflict, reminding us that armed conflict is a cause and a consequence of state fragility, and the importance of not just adding the youth and stirring, but meaningful youth engagement to understand their role beyond just inclusion. But what is it that they can bring to the issues of governance and bringing in the young people's perspective? So thank you very much for that contribution that you've made. And please keep your questions coming in the Q&A. And we will also be able to get some last comments from you just now. I do not have Edmund Yakani yet, but I'm going to move over to Honorable Betty Ogwario. Betty, over to you. And I'm giving the speakers around 5 minutes, if that is okay with you, to keep your points in that space. Thank you, Betty.
Thank you, Pravina. Nice seeing you. I want to say protocol observed, and I want to particularly greet Madame Diop, Benita Diop, and I want to thank her for joining the conversation at the National Dialogue. That was very much appreciated. I'm going to be very brief because you have asked me to comment on the silencing of guns, but I want to connect silencing of guns with the peace agreement that is now in South Sudan and the National Dialogue. The National Dialogue is complementary to the peace agreement because the peace agreement, when it came in, it was really an elite process, and a top-down approach, and it didn't involve everybody. The only way they could silence the gun through that process was to sign a ceasefire, which is not often respected, but I would say thank you up to now. There's relatively quiet rural South Sudan. And then the National Dialogue, on the other hand, The national dialogue on the other hand was a bottom-up approach where the people on the ground were consulted on what went wrong in South Sudan and how best could this be solved. And I must say, Agatha has talked about the youth and youth involvement. The national dialogue really involved the youth, and the youth came up with very good recommendations of how they can silence the gun in South Sudan. Because number one, it is the youth that are being used to carry the guns and really to shoot the guns for the politicians. So the youth have decided that now, nothing for them if they don't benefit from it. So the youth are saying, no, we are not going to accept now the politicians using us and using the name of tribalism and the rest. They will not carry the guns. So national dialogue, although it is also within the revitalized peace agreement, it really discussed broadly. The governance Agatha was talking about is one of them, and security, economic involvement, and these are, if addressed, they will silence the gun. In the peace agreement, guns were silenced, as I said, by the signing of the agreement, which are often dishonored. While the national dialogues went down to the ground, the people actually recommended two things. One, the youth said, no, we are not going to fight anymore. And then the community said, what if South Sudan decide to bring in new guns that are not available around the neighboring countries? So that when the bullets in their hands are finished, then they have nowhere to buy more bullets, because there will be new kind of guns, and people say, well, this is a good idea, but then the neighboring countries might start also buying the same guns, and then the guns will not be silenced. So what is the best way? The best way is really to dialogue, and then tell the people, tell the youth, tell the people the difficulties, the difference, the problem the war brings, and the opportunities silencing the guns would bring. So in the end, what does it mean to silence guns in South Sudan? It really means that it will end the political and communal military violence in South Sudan. It will also bring peace and security, leave alone reducing the sexual violences that war brings along with it, and other gender-based violence. It will also return the community to harmony and tranquility as before, and then it will bring development and prosperity. But we know that silencing the gun is not an easy job, because if we say we collect the guns from the hands of the people, most of the people in South Sudan have guns in their homes, not only one gun. And they can voluntarily bring you the useless gun, and they have a lot of guns still in their houses. So what will be the best way to collect all the guns? And we say the only way is the dialogue. Sitting on the negotiation table is only bringing elite. And the elite only sit there to divide the seats. I want to be a minister, I want to be a prime minister, I want to be the vice president. They're not solving the problem of the people. So the best way is to go on a dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Betty, and really reminding us of the multiple processes that happen in peace processes, the elite, but the national dialogue, and the core issues that the national dialogue was speaking to. So linking it again to the importance of youth, youth involvement in silencing the guns, but coming in to end the violence that can grip these kind of processes. But I think, again, we know that the peace table is not only the formal table. And I think, Honorable Betty, just over the years, you have both from the women's movement and now in your role as chairperson over the various committees has underscored that importance of the multiple levels at which we need to engage in. So thank you so much for taking us into that space as well. Allow me then to see if there are any questions. Elisa, can I get some help to see if there are any questions on the for the colleagues on the South Sudan panel? I know we are one speaker less, so I'll allow a few questions to be asked. So there's one question. Too much of water has been spilled, especially in South Sudan, where disabilities as a result of wars are numerous. How do we address this issue as a transit to peace? So that is from David. Any other questions? Anybody wants to raise any points of clarification?
Please show that by raising your hand, and technical.
Yes, and
mute your mic. Thank you.
Yes. And please also do remember to pop your questions into the chat box because the colleagues are collecting these questions. I did see the question from Denga. Anybody else?
Yes, Pravina, we have a question from Jonathan Sandy.
Jonathan, go ahead.
It's in the chat.
Have you put it in the chat?
Yes.
Okay. Elisa, can you read for me? I'm not seeing it in the chat. Is it in the Q&A or in the chat? It's in the Q&A. So Honorable Betty, thank you so much. Here's a question for you. What role has the Women Consortium played in promoting the implementation of the peace process? What role can women play in silencing the guns? So that's the second question. So I'm going to give Honorable Betty yourself a chance first to respond to both the questions and use that as a point to make some closing remarks. And then Agedio, I'll come back to you to take the first question, but also to make some closing points on the Sudan case study. What is it that we need to be doing? What is the perspectives from people on the ground in terms of silencing the guns? Over to you, Honorable Betty.
Yeah, thank you so much for the questions. Yeah, the Women Consortium is a consortium of 23 women organizations that are working in different fields. But what role did they play in the peace agreement? First of all, when the peace agreement was being negotiated, the Women Consortium gathered together and encouraged women to go and be part and parcel of the negotiation table. They collected materials, they collected money, they sent to people, and they kept on in contact with the people who were in Addis Ababa or in Khartoum negotiating. Now, when the peace agreement was signed, the Women Consortium took the peace agreement and disseminated it all over the country so that the women should understand what is in the peace agreement and what is in it for them as women. The only thing that flagged out so well in the peace agreement for the women is the affirmative action, which the revitalized peace agreement has raised it to 35% from the 25%, and then also the Women Empowerment Fund. Up to now, because the agreement has not been fully implemented, the Women Empowerment Fund has not been yet implemented. The 35% also is not fully implemented. We still have not achieved it, and the women are still fighting for it. Now, when it came to the national dialogue, I want to say that I must appreciate UN Women for both the peace agreement and the national dialogue for enhancing the women to go down to the grassroots and talk to the women. With the national dialogue, the women went to the grassroots and collected their views and organized them so that when the dialogue reaches them, whether it is a grassroots dialogue or the regional conferences or the national conference, the women are prepared and they know what they are talking about. So women really got prepared. When they came back, especially now when it came to the national conference, the women were speaking with one voice. It didn't matter whether that woman was coming from rural Malakal or rural Torit or wherever, or whether that woman is from one party or the other, or whether that woman is from one organization or the other. The issues were the one the women were speaking about. And one of it was silencing the guns. The women said, we are tired of war. We are tired of being killed. We are tired of being raped. Our children are being bombed in area and they get deformed. So the women want the guns to be silenced. The women want to sit on the negotiation, on the decision-making table. So when the men can decide that they want to go for war, then the women are there to say, no, it is not war. We want to go for negotiation and we need to dialogue. And the only party that did not come to the dialogue was the SPLM-IO. The women tried to go and talk to them and say, if you are aggrieved, the only place that you can talk to the population is during the dialogue. They still did not come, but the women are still trying. So the women have played their part and they're still playing their part. As I talk to you now, the women are now sitting in a meeting to say now the next forum is the constitution making. And we want to be part of that constitution making because we want to see the women issues flagged up very clearly in the constitution. So the women of South Sudan, through the Women Consortium, through the Women Coalition, through the different forums, they are not sleeping anymore. The women are waking up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Betty, and those responses. Go ahead, Agedio. I'm going to ask for just time on it when you're responding.
Okay, I'll try and keep it brief.
Yeah, thank you. I know they are very interesting issues. I just feel bad to do this.
It's true. It's like a shopping. Indeed, you know, the challenge in South Sudan at the moment is, first of all, ensuring that, you know, we silence the guns. The problem now has been that most people in South Sudan generally are tired of war. And as Madam Betty mentioned, the women are tired of war, equally the youth are tired of war. And the problem is the leaders are not listening. They're not getting the message, although it's loud and clear. The issue, I believe, is for us to move from this, as I mentioned early on, you cannot silence guns unless you prevent them from happening, right? So ideally, what we should be doing is putting in place frameworks that actually prevent conflict from, you know, not only from taking place, because conflict is inevitable, but from ensuring that they do not become violent. And or they do not transform into armed struggle as what we had in the case. Because essentially what happens is that it becomes a cycle of violence after violence. And then you have generations of young people who don't actually have any hopes, and, you know, their dreams are shattered. So I believe that the only way we can not only just silence the guns is that we have to tackle it right at the beginning of it. And this is where I say governance plays such a huge issue. If we then understand that government institutions of governance are important in mediating conflict, then we believe then these institutions then can prevent the conflict from actually taking place. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And please, I know that these are such deep questions that we have, so go ahead and keep the chat alive in the chat room or in the question and A, and please pose those questions, because I'm sure that both Honorable Betty Ogwario and Agedio Adok will be more than happy to respond to some of those questions, even in the chat room. So let us then move on. We are on 13:45 your time, and there are now 85 people with us. We're live on Facebook, and we want to move into the session on Burundi. And I'm going to invite the two speakers. Give them. Go ahead, Elisa.
Okay, so on behalf of Edmund, we have Betty Kute, whose hand is up. She just wanted to intervene on behalf of South Sudan. If you can
okay. Betty, can I ask you to give us this in 3 minutes? I can't see you.
Betty?
Betty? So just to add to the conversation that we've had, are you there? Betty Kute? Go ahead, my sister.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the presentations of our Honorable Betty Ogwaro. That was credible, but my intervention comes to, if we talk of silencing the guns in Africa, as she has mentioned, we acknowledge that there was a ceasefire which has been signed, but up to now in parts of the states, they're still fighting. Fighting is still going on. So that makes to me, if we say that they're still signing the peace agreement or still signing the cessation of hostility, there is silencing of guns, it means that there is something missing somewhere, is one. Two, the importance of silencing guns in South Sudan has a lot to do with women's life, with the life of young girls. The women of South Sudan are really suffering from this conflict, and then it has a lot on impact. And then when we talk on women, peace and security,
Betty? Betty, we lost you a little bit there. When we talk on women, peace and security, can you repeat that for us?
Okay, well, now are you getting me?
Yes, we are.
Hello?
And we lost you when you said on women, peace and security.
So when we talk on women, peace and security, it means fully participation. So we acknowledge that the signing of the peace agreement has awarded 35% for women, but up to now, we still have 26%, which means that the participations of women, peace and security, especially in South Sudan, there's a little bit gap on it. And we really need to move forward to see that the women, peace and security with the conflict, the National Action Plan was not implemented fully because of the conflict that happened in the
Thank you so much, Betty. We are losing the connection with you, but I think we've gotten the main points that you've raised. And I think both the previous speakers also alluded to that it's not only about silencing the guns, but how do you even prevent the guns, which Agedyo reminded us about, but also then reminding us of the full participation of women. And even though we have provisions of 35%, we're not seeing that implemented or that commitment realized. So something is missing. That is what your main point is telling us. Something is missing, and you start to remind us about some of the things that could be missing. So allow me then to move on to Burundi. And I have then two speakers here that will speak. It's Dr. Theodora Mazumutima, who's the National Director of the REMA in Burundi. And Dr. Theodora is going to be sharing the findings of the report and provide recommendations that translate women and youth, Burundian refugees, IDPs, and returnees' concerns into concrete political, economic, and social reforms. So Dr. Theodora, are you here with us?
Yes, hello everybody.
Good afternoon.
I am going to mute my video to be able to maximize on my internet, which is not very stable. I am speaking from Bujumbura, and we have just concluded a research project, and we work together with IRI, International Refugee Rights Initiative, and REMA Burundi with the support of Oxfam. And so I'm going very quickly within the few minutes which I have been given to tell you what the research was all about, what are the findings, and as well as the few recommendations, but we can get the full report in French afterwards in case you need that. We wanted basically to give the opportunity to the returnees to be able to speak of their experience of return, what they are going through and what they would want addressed. And so we have had about 106,000 returnees coming back from Burundi, from Tanzania and Rwanda in the last 2 or so years. And so we wanted to try to understand what their experiences are. And so these were some of the generally some of the challenges that they reported. On the question why they are coming back, it was so much of push factors from the refugee camps. Really, life is very challenging, and it's very difficult to get livelihood in the camps, as they have been limited to do other activities other than just the meager assistance which they receive from UNHCR. So we had reports of push factors from the camps rather than pull factors. And so they are coming in the hope that with the new government that things will be better. At least some were saying it cannot be worse than what it is in the camps. And the challenge when they arrive here in Burundi has to do with little assistance. And basically it is because they're coming into a context with very, very limited resources, and they have to fight with others to try to get access to those resources. So the little return packages which they receive, which is supposed to last them for 2 weeks, for 3 months, only last them for 1 month. And it is only assisted returnees who get that. Many more returnees are coming back on their own, and they don't receive that assistance. But also we have realized that the assistance does not include generally issues to do with housing, when we know that 59% of the returnees do not have to find their houses already non-existent. And while also the little assistance that they get sometimes has to do with supporting agriculture, when 21% of the returnees who are coming back do not have access to land. It's not necessarily as a result of having left the country, but it's simply that they were always landless even before they left the country. We have realized that women here struggle specifically to get access to the means of production, which is generally the land, and because especially of the laws, land ownership in Burundi is customary. So women who either lose their husbands while in the camps, widows, and others who are divorced, they can't easily access those means of production, but also even the little loan that they get from, that men could get easily from the banks and the financial institutions, women don't have the same help and the same easy access to that. There have been a lot of lost identity. Women in the camps, it seems, they have their self-esteem brought up by different initiatives and assistance from different NGOs. And once they come back, and we men who had been basically almost at par because they all live on assistance in the refugee camp, once back in the country, men want to reaffirm their masculinity, sometime through violence, and this has been quite a very difficult thing to deal with, especially that these men who had lost their power to provide for the family want to reaffirm that power at the expenses of children and women. Access to documentation has been another challenge. With more than so I don't see the numbers very quickly, but with quite a big number of children not being able to be registered and then not being able to access to other services which the government is giving. We have also realized that only about 50% of the children are able to go back to school for different reasons, simply because they come at a wrong time of the academic year, or simply because they did not continue with the same educational system when they were away from Burundi in the refugee camps where they were, and for many other different reasons, poverty, and so on. There have been a lot of migration as well within the country. People who cannot find livelihood in their return zones and who decide to migrate towards other communes or other areas of the country for different reasons, especially economic, but then who find themselves being harassed by the local authorities. Of course, there have been a lot of also misunderstanding between the local authorities and the returnees, who are sometimes assumed to belong to the opposition. And although this is not necessarily as a result of the government's policy, local or bad and negative initiatives have been raised against returnees as they are being targeted as non-patriotic, in some cases by people from the ruling party in some areas. And this has been especially with the youth in Bonerakure in some places. But it should be said that the government has been very clearly supportive of this return movement. And so we...
Dr. Theodora, I'm going to ask you to try to summarize for us.
Yes, so the few recommendations which you will find in our reports have to do with enhancing good relationship between the returnees and the local and the local populations. They have to be to combat unequal and exclusive gender relationship by educating the community on appropriate gender-sensitive and anti-sexual and gender-based violence laws and processes for prevention and redress, and to undertake activities to prevent land conflict and promote peaceful social collaboration by encouraging the population to register land in the land registry. And many more recommendations which you might find in the report. It's so clear. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Theodora, and also for turning our lens onto IDPs and refugees and that particular nexus and intersection with the Silencing the Guns initiative, but particularly also bringing it to us from the Burundi experience, where we know that you have a number of refugees or IDPs that resettled, and what does that then bring to it. So I think the report will be something good for us to be reviewing and taking the recommendations, but yeah, the unequal gender relations and how do we work with that, but the good relations between the settled communities and the returnees. So thank you very much for that. Let me then turn on to, and please do pop in your questions into the Q&A and the chat box for Dr. Theodora as well, because I will give Dr. Theodora a chance to come back with some closing points. Catherine Mabubori. Catherine also needs no introduction to this area. She's from the Burundi Women and Girls Movement for Peace and Security, and she's going to be talking to us on solutions and opportunities that translate women and youth, Burundian refugees, IDPs, and returnees' concerns into the reforms that the political, economic, and social reforms. Over to you, Catherine, and I'm also going to give you around 5 to 6 minutes, which I have been trying to give all the participants, all the panelists. So please, if you can keep it within the 5 to 6 minutes. Catherine, over to you, and please unmute.
Sorry, Pravina, Madam Akbabori is out. She's back again now.
I see her there.
Yes, she's
I
back.
see her there.
I'm back, I'm sorry. Okay, may I go ahead?
Go ahead, go ahead. You have about 5 to 6 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to thank Theodora for what he has just said about the situation of refugees and especially of returnees. I have been asked to talk about solutions and opportunities that translate women and youth, Burundian refugees, IDPs and returnees concerns into concrete and political, economic and social reforms. And for me, before maybe talking about solutions and opportunities, I think we should look at the context and the challenges. Of course, Theodora have raised some, but if we are talking about refugees, IDPs, and returnees, we talk about them because there is or there has been a threatening situation. So for refugees to return home, I think they need, first of all, a security guarantee, because I don't think no one would like to remain a refugee for life. So most of the time, unfortunately, those who are meant to protect civilians, including women and youth, are the ones who are in charge of, are the ones who are accused of being at the origin of people fleeing or being IDPs. So in Burundi, we have another particular situation. Maybe it exists also in other countries. The additional threat comes from the youth wing of the ruling party, which we call Imbonerakure, and that United Nations has even qualified as a militia. So I think the situation is that we are living in a situation that many leaders, opposition leaders, civil society leaders, and women leaders, medias, journalists have fled the country, and we have been making advocacy for the return of peace in Burundi. And I'm very thankful to GIMAC, because GIMAC has really given us a space to advocate for peace in our country. And we know that many decisions and the resolutions at the African Union, at UN level, have been done, but those resolutions, those recommendations remained unheard by the government. And instead, there has been the fact that the government has been crying out that for international conspiracies. So the situation is very difficult, because even the High Commission for Human Rights has been closed in Burundi. So despite the new government, the situation has not changed, and the population is living in constant fear, and many people avoid to speak out to avoid repression. So I think within this situation, it is not even easy. It is not easy for the population which is in the country, and it becomes much more difficult for refugees, for ITPs, and for returnees to be really reintegrated. So as far as refugees, I think solutions and the opportunities while in exile depends, of course, on the policies and of the host countries, and the relationship maybe the country has with Burundi, because we have seen that there is a difference in treatment for refugees who are in Tanzania, for refugees who are in Uganda, and for refugees who are in Rwanda. I don't go in details, but we have seen that there is really a situation which is not easy, especially for those who are in Tanzania. So But refugees continue to organize so that they can continue to live. Women in refugee camps in Tanzania have been organizing to make some trade, to make some agriculture, of course, within a difficult environment, because they are most of the time they are threatened by the environment, the population from Tanzania, because they are maybe threatening their environment. So I think for the case of Burundi or Rwanda, I know best, people have been organizing to continue to advocate for peace. Media organized from exile to continue broadcasting. Women and youth continue. We organize a lot of trainings for youth and women. We developed microfinances for savings and credits for economic empowerment. And the last days, we have taken opportunity of COVID environment to virtually build capacity through training for youth and for women. So if I can talk about solutions, opportunities for IDPs, IDP's situation is very different, because there have some IDPs who have been established in IDPs camps since 1993 for security reasons. There are other new IDPs due to catastrophic events like floods, like heavy rains for most of the times. So for those who are in IDP camps for security reasons, most of them prefer to remain there, and the government should take into account their needs and wishes so that they can definitely be established in those environment. They are talking about village de la paix, and that is what we have been advocating. So it means bringing other population to join IDPs and make a village. That's what we call peace village. And at the grassroots level,
can I ask you to wrap up in 1 minute?
Yeah. Okay. Let me say that as the topic is about the silencing the guns, I think everybody agrees that peace does not mean the absence of the war. Peace is all about human security, including being free from violence of all kinds, particularly gender-based violence and the youth-oriented violence, because during the conflict, it is most of the time youth which is targeted. So political violence is the first gun which needs to be silenced. Political discrimination, hate speech, which is very much present in Burundi's situation, political intolerance, which leads to refugee ITPs, all these needs to be banned. If those guns are silenced, the dignity of refugees and IDPs and returnees can easily be restored. And Theodore has talked about the land issue. I think this is high time the government Burundi think about voting a law on inheritance, because a draft is already existing. And I think this can solve the problems of those women coming back and who are not able to join their lands because they have no longer rights, because their husbands are no longer there. So in conclusion, all what I have said, all the challenges to be raised, all depends on the political will to promote good governments, as someone from Sudan has said it, democratic values and security for all at all time, including during electoral periods. So that is what I think means silencing the guns for Africa in the context of Burundi.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Catherine, and your passion for the area and how you are dedicating your life and energy definitely comes out. I think shifting the focus a little bit from literally the literal meaning of silencing the guns to more in terms of a figurative meaning of silencing the guns means security guarantee, silencing the guns means political tolerance, political advances, and not being sidelined in terms of the political dynamics, but also confirming to us and drawing our attention to how refugees, IDPs, continue to organize themselves, even in terms of being facing the core brunt of conflict and the impacts of war, but they continue to organize themselves and look at ways of integrating both in terms of new villages, or how do we proceed in terms of claiming back that space that we would have been displaced from due to the conflicts that we're experiencing. So let me now ask if there are any questions. And Elisa, I don't know if you have picked up any particular questions for the colleagues in Burundi. Those that are hosted okay, I don't see any there. Okay, I don't see any questions from where I'm looking. I think there's a general question about what is the best approaches to get young people to adhere to conflict prevention. What are the means of resilience to put them in place, in terms of the African Union to deal with the post-conflict period? And I think I've seen that come through in the chat. But perhaps let me then say, I would like to give Theodora and Catherine, just in terms of being fair, a minute each just to make some last concluding points on silencing the guns and from the perspective of refugees, IDPs, and in particular focus on the Burundi context. So I'm going to ask you, Theodora, 1 minute, if you can come back and give us the points that you would like to have made but didn't get a chance to.
Thank you very much. In general, in a country with high democratic pressure, with ever-rising levels of unemployment and poverty, security challenges, and the low rate of development, so returnees really experience big challenges as they try to compete for scarce resources and opportunities. So for emphasis purposes, I would like to call for a multi-sectoral planning for the absorption of those returnees. And this has to involve a careful planning and a careful coordination by the government. And if we do not have a good environment to welcome refugees so that they are economically, socially, and politically integrated, I'm afraid we are going to end up with a new wave of displacement again. But reintegration of returnees tend to lead to renewed displacement. So we need to invest a lot in the integration of those returnees. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Theodora. Very concrete and reminding us of the intersection in terms of high democratic pressure, securitization, low rates of development, and the whole point of refugees having to return home and what's the experience in that sense, and new waves of displacement. Thank you very, very much for it. And I think perhaps a link to the report in the chat room will also help others go through that, and perhaps for the rapporteurs as well in crafting some of the recommendations from here. I thank you very much. Catherine, a minute in terms of final points, perhaps focusing on the girls and youth.
Okay. I think I think organizations which are working on the grounds have a very big role to play. I know that in Burundi there are still at grassroots level some organizations, especially women and youth organizations, continue to do a wonderful work to hold communities together, to encounter the hatred speeches, which is more and more dangerous in the country, especially in a fragilized country, fragilized by ethnic conflicts. So I think those who are still working on the ground have a big role to play. Like Rema, for example, which I have just known today, they have a vital role in advocating for an open civic space and for an inclusive, people-centered security, which meets the everyday safety and security needs for all, because we have raised a number of those issues like shelter, like we can mention education, we can mention health, we can, you know, all what human beings need to live really a better life. So this is my call for organizations who can still organize on the ground, because we have seen in the past how very much we have helped as women's coalitions, as youth coalitions, working together to hold the community together there. And this can avoid this threat that Theodora has mentioned, that we may live again another wave of displacement. This really should be, we should do whatever we can so that we can stop the cycle, some being refugees, others returning, and others going back to refugees. So this is really a situation we need to stop.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Thank you so much. And I am really sorry to all the speakers, because this is such a rich dialogue. And it's the whole purpose of why we have convened this multi-country high-level dialogue on silencing the guns, because we want to hear what does it mean to the African people. But time is never always on our side with this, and we take from it that this is the start of many conversations to come in this field. We are now halfway through the country presentations, and I have still 2 more presentations and some closing remarks. We're about half an hour away from what we promised you would be the end time. So I, with your permission, want to ask us to bear with each other and allow us to go for a little bit longer, perhaps an additional half an hour, so we can try to fit in what is still left on this agenda. But let me then say, can we take a quick 2-minute break while we get ready for the Mali group, or maybe a 2 to 3 minute break, just to stretch your legs and take a quick coffee or something on your table, water, so that the absorption and engagement for the next issues are not compromised by us trying to focus in this new platform that we are working. So let us just take a 2-minute break, and if our Mali speakers can be prepared, Mayor Kadida Sangare and Mayor Saran Keita. I trust you are with us. Yes, you are there. I see you, Madam Kadida, and Ma Saran Keita is there as well. So grab yourself a quick cup of coffee, and we will move on to Burundi, onto Mali. And it's really amazing to see that we had originally would have had 50 people, but 70 have joined us. And this is really, you know, a confirmation that it's timely a discussion that we need to be having. So if you're back with us, I see we still have all the participants here. So we are on about 1:30 your time, which is about 3:30 in GMT +2. We have two more. If you're joining us, this is the multi-country high-level dialogue on silencing the guns, and we are focusing on what African people say. We're taking case studies. We have completed South Sudan and Burundi, and we have two more case studies left, which is that from Mali and DRC. We have two speakers for Mali and two speakers for the DRC, following which we then have a session 2, which is a way forward, and this will be led by Dr. Martha Mutusi and Paul Vingi, who will do the dialogue rapporteurs, and will present us a post-dialogue advocacy action plan, and then finally a closing ceremony. So let us move then on to the session on Mali, our third country case study. And it is my absolute pleasure to invite Mayor Kadida Sangara, who's the former Minister of Human Rights, former Deputy and former President of the National Commission for Human Rights in Mali, was someone who's been with us in the trenches all the time and championing these issues. She is going to be addressing us on the widespread grievances through more inclusive governance, justice sector reform, and engendered peace processes in Mali. And of course, the focus on Mali as well as being one of the countries that we are responding to challenges at this time. So over to you, Mayor Kadida. Please unmute. Please, can you unmute yourself? Can you unmute yourself? Fantastic. Thank you. Please, can you unmute? Yes. Mayor Keita, are you going to speak first? There we are.
Hello? Hello? Hello?
Yes, yes, we can hear you. Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Oui. Bonjour. Bonjour. Vous m'entendez?
Bonjour, ça va? Yes,
oui,
we
ça
can.
Va bien.
Yes, we
bon.
can.
D'accord. Je vous remercie pour m'avoir donné la parole et pour l'intérêt que vous avez accordé au Mali. Nous saluons les nombreuses initiatives prises par le bureau de l'envoyé spécial du président de l'Union africaine sur femmes, paix et sécurité, dont les résultats permettent de faire le point de la situation des femmes et des filles, en particulier dans les pays qui connaissent les crises comme le Mali. Le Mali, comme vous le savez, a accédé à l'indépendance en 1960, mais de l'indépendance à nos jours, il est confronté à plusieurs défis, comme les crises multidimensionnelles et les réponses de l'État, à la fois militaires, politiques et socio-économiques, n'ont pas réussi à instaurer une paix durable dans le pays. À cause de plusieurs facteurs, comme les coups d'État à répétition. Comme vous savez, le Mali a connu 4 coups d'État, la mauvaise gestion, la corruption, le clientélisme, le népotisme, l'impunité, l'insécurité grandissante causée par le terrorisme et l'existence des groupes armés rebelles et d'autodéfense. À cela, il faut ajouter aussi le dysfonctionnement de la justice et l'absence de juridiction dans certaines localités à cause de l'insécurité. Je vais parler des défis qui persistent, les défis persistants. Nous ne reviendrons pas sur la crise multidimensionnelle et l'instabilité institutionnelle que notre pays connaît depuis 2012 et qui ont engendré des difficultés et des défis d'ordre politique, sécuritaire, social et économique. Nous allons juste citer les 2 coups d'État intervenus en 2012 et en 2020. Le terrorisme et les attaques terroristes contre les forces armées et de sécurité et les populations civiles, les conflits intercommunautaires, la prolifération des armes et la multiplication des milices d'autodéfense qui ont entraîné des pertes importantes en vies humaines, un nombre toujours croissant de déplacés internes et de réfugiés, la destruction des infrastructures socio-économiques de base, la fuite des agents de l'État et des agents de sécurité en direction de la capitale, Bamako. Chacun de ces facteurs ajoutés à l'embargo de la CEDEAO a eu des conséquences spécifiques néfastes sur la vie des femmes et des filles qui évoluent dans les domaines de grande vulnérabilité comme le secteur informel, qui a connu avec la COVID-19 un effondrement des petites activités économiques. En effet, l'analyse des besoins humanitaires en 2020 indique que les femmes représentent 52% des personnes qui se trouvent dans les besoins. Dès lors, les femmes et les filles du Mali, faire taire les armes en 2020 constitue un objectif qui ne saurait être atteint qu'à long ou à moyen ou long terme. Pour cela, les différentes composantes sociales, politiques et religieuses du pays doivent s'accorder sur les urgences. Nous avons ciblé des axes prioritaires et le chronogramme tel que dégagé dans la feuille de route de la transition à l'issue des concertations régionales tenues les 10 et 12 octobre 2020 à Bamako. Sur les axes prioritaires, les femmes du Mali ont travaillé sur leurs priorités en concertation avec le ministère de la Promotion de la Femme, de l'Enfant et de la Famille. Elles s'inscrivent dans les axes prioritaires de la transition en y apportant une dimension genre et elles ont alimenté le plan d'action du gouvernement de transition. Les axes ayant un impact sur la vie des femmes sont: axe 1, le renforcement de la sécurité sur l'ensemble du territoire national. Les priorités dans cet axe incluent l'agenda des femmes. Redéployer les forces de défense et de sécurité sur l'ensemble du territoire national. Procéder à la dissolution des milices d'autodéfense. Diligenter la relecture, l'appropriation et la mise en œuvre de l'accord pour la paix et la réconciliation au Mali. Accélérer le processus de DDR des combattants du Nord et du Centre et mettre en place un programme spécifique pour les combattants et un soutien économique pour les femmes et les filles qui évoluent dans la restauration et autres activités développées autour des camps des combattants. L'axe numéro 2 porte sur la réforme du secteur de la justice. Renforcer le service public de la justice. Réorganiser et soutenir l'assistance judiciaire en faveur des femmes démunies. Mettre en place un fonds d'indemnisation au profit des femmes victimes de violences basées sur le genre. Renforcer la lutte contre l'impunité et la corruption. Car la corruption et l'impunité, toujours décriées, constituent des fléaux à combattre à tous les niveaux de la société. Des victimes de graves violations des droits de l'homme attendent toujours que justice soit faite. En dépit de la mise en place d'une nouvelle carte judiciaire, la justice connaît des dysfonctionnements dus d'une part aux interférences politiques, à la corruption, mais aussi à l'absence de juridiction dans certaines localités à cause de l'insécurité grandissante. Aussi, des pesanteurs socio-culturels continuent d'influencer le fonctionnement de la justice. L'axe numéro 3 porte sur la promotion de la bonne gouvernance. Alors, refonder le système politique et institutionnel par la relecture des textes fondamentaux, comme la Constitution, la loi électorale, la charte des partis politiques et certaines dispositions relatives à la Cour constitutionnelle. Veiller à l'intégration du genre par l'inclusion des dispositions de la loi numéro 052 de 2015, instituant le quota de 30%. Élaborer une loi spécifique sur les violences basées sur le genre promouvoir le dialogue entre Maliens, la culture de la paix en impliquant les personnes et ressources influentes dans les communautés et au niveau national. Promouvoir et mettre en œuvre le plan d'action de mise en œuvre de la résolution 1325 et prendre les mesures idoines pour garantir la pleine participation des femmes à toutes les étapes du processus. L'axe numéro 4, c'est la réforme du système éducatif. Il faudrait organiser des assises nationales sur l'éducation, engager une refonte du système éducatif, prendre des mesures urgentes nécessaires pour la réhabilitation et l'ouverture des écoles fermées et le retour des enseignants dans les localités d'affectation, ainsi que des parents et des élèves. Axe numéro 5, l'adoption d'impacts de stabilité sociale. Relancer le dialogue avec les groupes radicaux maliens. Engager le dialogue entre les communautés et acteurs locaux en conflit. Impliquer les personnes et ressources et les notabilités dans les programmes de retour des déplacés et des réfugiés dans leurs localités d'origine, créer toutes les conditions de leur retour, accélérer aussi le processus d'indemnisation des victimes depuis 1960. Il faut signaler que ces axes prioritaires de la transition ont servi de base à l'élaboration d'un plan d'action de la transition qu'il serait fastidieux de dérouler ici. C'est pourquoi je vais conclure en disant que les femmes rencontrent des difficultés réelles pour leur prise en compte dans les instances de la transition par des autorités qui semblent ignorer l'existence de la loi numéro 052 qui garantit la pleine représentation des femmes dans les postes nominatifs. Et c'est en dépit du fait que les dites autorités de la transition ont réitéré leur attachement au respect des instruments africains et internationaux pertinents. Je voudrais aussi signaler quelques opportunités qui s'ouvrent aux femmes. Plusieurs initiatives sont en train d'être développées par le PNUD et ONU Femmes et l'envoyé spécial pour mettre en place un soutien logistique, matériel et financier aux efforts des femmes du Mali, qui sont de nature à les outiller et les aider à s'organiser pour une plus grande visibilité de leurs actions. Nous sollicitons des appuis au plaidoyer des femmes au niveau régional, international, pour la prise en compte de leurs doléances. Il faut noter qu'un groupe de soutien à la transition vient d'être mis en place sous la houlette de l'Union africaine et de la CEDEAO le lundi 30 novembre, piloté par le commissaire à la paix et à la sécurité de l'Union africaine, qui constitue également une opportunité de plus pour soutenir les femmes maliennes. Tout ceci est largement tributaire de l'évolution négative de la courbe de la COVID-19 dans un pays qui est déjà fragilisé. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much, Khadija. And I think what we hear here in terms of the Mali context is the recent constitutional challenges that we've experienced have given women the chance to reassess their opportunities and how they can change this environment in terms of ensuring that their rights are promoted in new legislation, in new institutions, and in a new way forward. So the call for inter-Malian dialogue, the promotion of the action plan, and the full participation of Malian women is what is coming from the ground from Mali. So thank you so much for your contributions, and we know that this is not very easy times for the constituency there. Let me then ask Saran Keita to come in. Saran, may I also ask you to keep with the 5 minutes that is allocated. Thank you so much. Saran? Can I ask you to mute yourself, or technical staff, can you mute Khadija and allow Madam Saran Keita to speak? Thank you. Go ahead, Ma.
Thank you. Okay, merci.
You have a second computer on in that room. Go ahead.
C'est bon là?
Go ahead.
On peut aller?
Yes, you may go ahead.
Merci beaucoup. D'accord, merci beaucoup. Je disais que je tiens très sincèrement à remercier FAZ et ses partenaires pour l'organisation de cet échange via la plateforme Zoom webinaire. Je remercie très sincèrement Mme Diop pour sa disponibilité constante et renouvelée pour les questions de femmes, paix et sécurité. Et je remercie Maître Maïga qui me donne l'occasion d'intervenir sur la participation des femmes et des jeunes au processus de paix et de transition au Mali, les défis, les opportunités. Ma communication se structure comme suit. Dans un premier temps, je vais vous faire l'analyse de la situation sociopolitique et sécuritaire. Ensuite, les opportunités, et je vais terminer par les défis et faire 3 recommandations par rapport à cette thématique. Donc, en parlant de l'analyse de la situation sociopolitique et sécuritaire, je dirais que depuis 2012, le Mali vit une crise multidimensionnelle sans précédent, malgré la signature de l'accord pour la paix et la réconciliation issu du processus d'Alger entre le gouvernement et les groupes armés en 2015. Il y a l'insécurité qui s'agrandit dans le centre et le sud du pays et qui s'est transformée en conflit intercommunautaire. À ce tableau, il faut ajouter la mauvaise gouvernance dans tous les segments de l'État qui a conduit à une crise de confiance entre les gouvernements et les gouvernés. À cela s'ajoute la mauvaise organisation des élections législatives de mars-avril 2020 qui ont été sérieusement contestées par une grande majorité des Maliens après l'arrêt de la Cour constitutionnelle. Pour décrire cette situation, plusieurs organisations fêtières de la société civile, les partis politiques de l'opposition et certaines centrales syndicales se sont regroupées pour créer le mouvement du 5 juin, Rassemblement des forces patriotiques, le M5 RFP. Ce mouvement a organisé plusieurs meetings de dénonciation et de contestation de la mauvaise gouvernance généralisée, de l'insécurité grandissante, de la crise scolaire, des résultats des élections législatives qui ne correspondent pas aux réalités des urnes. Par conséquent, le mouvement réclamait la démission du président de la République et de son régime. La communauté internationale, à sa tête la CEDEAO, a déployé plusieurs missions de médiation pour tenter de résoudre la crise socio-politique et sécuritaire, qui malheureusement ont toutes échoué, ce qui a conduit à la démission du président de la République et de son régime. Les femmes et les jeunes ont été les principales actrices acteurs de ces mouvements de contestation qui ont fortement contribué à la démission du régime. Mais malheureusement, il faut le dire, ils ont été sous-représentés aux journées de concertation nationale et dans les organes de gestion de la transition qui sont en train d'être mis en place au Mali. Comme opportunité, je dirais qu'il y a l'existence des instruments juridiques. Le Mali est champion en matière de ratification des accords, conventions et traités régionaux et internationaux. Plusieurs instruments juridiques ont été ratifiés par le Mali pour faciliter la participation des femmes et des jeunes dans la gestion de la chose publique. On peut noter, entre autres, au niveau national, il y a des textes qui sont là, les textes juridiques au niveau interne. Au niveau international, nous avons la résolution 1325. Nous savons tous que cette résolution du Conseil de sécurité sur les femmes, la paix et la sécurité est un outil dont l'efficacité dépend de la capacité analytique à maîtriser les dimensions sexo-spécifiques des conflits et de la paix. L'efficacité de la résolution 1325 dépend aussi de la capacité technique à maîtriser et appliquer l'approche axée sur l'égalité entre les sexes pour répondre aux défis propres aux hommes et aux femmes en situation de conflit et de post-conflit. Elle exige une sensibilité et une écoute des réalités humaines vécues spécifiquement et différemment par chaque sexe. Cette résolution est une aubaine pour les femmes. C'est la toute première résolution du Conseil de sécurité des Nations Unies adoptée à l'unanimité pour les femmes pour permettre leur participation à la gestion des conflits dans les pays. Et elle s'articule autour des 4 grands axes qui sont la prévention, la protection, la participation, le relèvement économique. Nous avons la résolution 2250 qui concerne les jeunes. Cette résolution du Conseil de sécurité des Nations Unies sur la jeunesse, la paix et la sécurité fournit des orientations essentielles pour résoudre les problèmes des jeunes dans le domaine de la violence armée et de la prévention. La résolution adoptée en 2015 identifie 5 piliers clés
pour l'action, la participation, la protection, la prévention, les partenariats, le désengagement et la réintégration. La résolution est le premier du genre à reconnaître formellement le rôle positif et les droits des jeunes à la création d'une paix durable et ouvre la voie à la façon dont les gouvernements et d'autres acteurs peuvent soutenir les jeunes. Traditionnellement, nous savons que sont considérés comme des acteurs. On pense à considérer l'explosion démographique des jeunes comme une menace pour la sécurité et la stabilité dans nos pays. Les jeunes hommes sont considérés comme un problème potentiel pour les principaux auteurs de violences criminelles et politiques, y compris la radicalisation et l'extrémisme violent. Au niveau national, je le disais tantôt, nous avons différents codes. Le code civil, le code pénal qui régissent les droits et des hommes et des femmes discriminatoires. Les sexes, les codes n'ont pas de sexe. Ils sont une matière de sécurité des Nations Unies. Il faut rappeler que le Mali est à la troisième génération de population présidentielle. Le mandat qui vient d'être préfacé et signé par le Premier ministre de la Transition le 12 novembre 2020 comporte des innovations. En effet, il a un caractère décentralisé qui consiste à prendre en
Mme Keita, can I ask you to wrap up and conclude for us?
Là, la politique, je vais aller très rapidement. Nous avons la politique nationale.
Can I ask you to make the recommendations in the next minute?
Oui, les recommandations. D'accord. Comme défi, d'abord, je vais dire qu'il y a la méconnaissance des textes relatifs aux droits des femmes et des jeunes par les missions. Nous avons la méconnaissance des textes juridiques par les femmes et les jeunes eux-mêmes. La politique cadre de développement de la jeunesse qui est devenue caduque depuis 2012. Le Mali avait une politique de développement de la jeunesse, mais qui n'est plus fonctionnelle parce que caduque. Nous avons l'insuffisance de volonté politique dans l'application des textes juridiques internationaux, régionaux, nationaux qui protègent les droits des femmes et des jeunes. Comme recommandation, je dirais qu'au regard des défis identifiés qui empêchent la participation des femmes et des jeunes à la gestion des affaires publiques, nous recommandons de respecter strictement la loi numéro 052 dans les organes de gestion de la transition, d'accroître les actions de sensibilisation, d'information et d'éducation des femmes et des jeunes sur les instruments juridiques relatifs à leurs droits, et aussi d'accélérer les consultations régionales des jeunes sur l'ancienne politique cadre de développement de la jeunesse en vue de sa relecture, qui est toujours en train d'être écrite, qui n'est pas encore terminée. Je vous remercie pour votre attention. Je n'ai pas eu beaucoup de temps pour parler. Merci beaucoup.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And we are so sorry that we have to cut your time. Well, not cut your time, but just that there are so many issues that need to be raised that it becomes impossible to try and fit them all. But thank you so much for your contributions today. I think that with the case of Mali, are you muting me, host? Sorry, with the case of Mali, I think what have you muted me? The host has muted me. Yeah, okay. Am I unmute now? Can you hear me? Yes?
Yes, we can.
Can you hear me? You can hear me. Okay, great stuff. So I think that in the case of Mali, what we have used this opportunity in terms of taking, experiences from the people. We have understood our two speakers in terms of clarifying what the issues are, looking at where we can provide solidarity from the women's movement, and perhaps where the guns have been. Where do we proceed with this and support them in this initiative? So I'm going to leave the Mali intervention at that and move straight on to the intervention by the DRC. So let me ask then if the colleagues from the DRC and our presenters are in the room or in the Zoom call already. Yes. Are they on? Yeah, very good, very good. So we now want to turn on to, may I ask the technical team to mute all participants, and then we will be able to minimize the interruption then on our speakers. So our presenters in terms of the DRC, I would like to call on Mr. Emmanuel Kabengele Kalonji, who's the national coordinator and the Network for Security and Justice Sector Reform in the DRC. And we will be hearing findings for a renewed commitment of the AU and government to a security sector reform process that meets the human security needs of people in the DRC. Please go ahead. Mr. Emmanuel Kabengele, are you connected? Yes, fantastic. Can you unmute yourself? Can you unmute yourself and technical team? Yes, I can hear you. We can hear you.
OK, merci de l'occasion que vous nous offrez pour partager avec vous sur la réforme du secteur de sécurité en République démocratique du Congo, dans le cadre de la campagne Faire taire les armes. Et nous allons le faire en 2 points. Le premier point, nous allons juste faire un bref commentaire de l'engagement de la République démocratique du Congo concernant la réforme du secteur de sécurité. Et puis, dans un deuxième temps, nous allons passer à l'étape de recommandation. Et notre exposé se veut plus en termes d'exhortation. Le 24 février 2013 a été signé à Addis Abeba l'accord cadre pour la paix, la sécurité et la coopération pour la République démocratique du Congo et pour la région. À sa conclusion, à sa signature, cet accord cadre a eu à susciter beaucoup d'espoir. Et cet accord a été accueilli avec beaucoup d'enthousiasme. Et je me souviens même d'une phrase importante de Mme Robinson, envoyée spéciale du secrétaire général des Nations Unies pour la région de Grand Lac, qui avait considéré l'accord comme un accord de l'espoir. Et pour nous, on avait considéré réellement l'accord comme une fenêtre d'opportunité, une ouverture vers des réalisations concrètes. Donc, on quittait de la théorie vers la pratique. Cet accord avait, entre autres, prescrit comme engagement pour la République démocratique du Congo, l'un des engagements, surtout le premier, c'est celui de continuer à approfondir la réforme du secteur de sécurité, en particulier en ce qui concerne l'armée et la police. Mais depuis que l'accord a été signé jusqu'à maintenant, on considère que la réforme du secteur de sécurité, c'est comme un véritable serpent de mer qui revient toujours sur la table, une tâche perpétuellement inachevée et recommencée, un gouffre de moyens. Et on pense que l'aide publique au développement risque de se révéler un gaspillage et n'avoir aucun impact si la réforme du secteur de sécurité n'est pas entendue par tous comme une priorité. Vous savez, la communauté internationale a consenti d'importants investissements en République démocratique du Congo depuis la fin de la transition d'après-guerre. Et s'il faut calculer les milliards de dollars qui ont eu à être investis en termes d'aide publique au développement, on pouvait se dire que la RDC allait gagner son pari en termes de développement. Mais malgré ces pas franchis, la population congolaise continue à vivre dans une pauvreté inégalable. Les investissements n'ont que peu concouru à transformer l'existence des Congolais ordinaires. 2 milliards de dollars dépensés n'ont pas apporté un changement dans les social du Congolais parce que la situation sécuritaire est volatile et fragile. Et pour pouvoir y remédier, nous pensons que la clé se retrouve dans la réforme du secteur de sécurité, car sans elle, le développement économique et social n'est pas possible. Comment y parvenir? L'appel est lancé à l'Union africaine ainsi qu'à tous les partenaires techniques et financiers de mutualiser les efforts autour de la réforme du secteur de sécurité, car pour taire définitivement les armes, il faut essentiellement investir dans le cadre de la réforme du secteur de sécurité et la coupler avec un programme efficace de désarmement, démobilisation, réintégration et réinsertion. L'expérience apprise en République démocratique du Congo nous montre qu'une réforme structurelle ne doit pas forcément être onéreuse si le soutien ou le besoin sont bien identifiés. Et l'on pense également qu'à travers le processus de réforme, on pourrait gagner en efficacité si on créait un équilibre entre l'appui que l'on accorde à des institutions de sécurité et l'appui que l'on accorde également aux institutions censées contrôler les institutions de sécurité. Et en termes de recommandations, nous avons 3 recommandations à faire. La première recommandation, c'est celle d'attirer l'attention de partenaires techniques et financiers, de créer un équilibre sur les différents appuis à la réforme du secteur de sécurité entre l'appui aux institutions et l'appui au renforcement de moyens de contrôle de ces institutions. La deuxième recommandation, c'est celle de soutenir activement le processus de démobilisation et réinsertion communautaire des éléments issus de groupes armés et forces combattantes. Et la troisième recommandation, c'est celle qui concerne les organisations de la société civile. Et nous pensons que le partenaire technique et financier pourrait faire œuvre utile en renforçant la voix des organisations de la société civile à travers notamment l'appui à la promotion d'un débat public sur la réforme du secteur de sécurité et justice pour plus d'appropriation et d'adhésion. Voilà les quelques mots que j'avais à présenter. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much, Dr. Emmanuel, and thank you for those very key recommendations there. I think drawing the attention then for the need of resources and the technical and implementing institutions to support this effort, but also silencing the guns in the context of the demobilization process and that link. And then finally, CSOs in terms of strengthening them and the role that they will particularly find and have expression to. Thank you so much for your input. It is now my pleasure to call upon Mayor Fabiola Faida Mawagliwa, who is the former minister in the DRC and also a person who has been with us in the work that we have been doing for a number of years. And the area that the former minister will cover are what strategic commitments for security sector reform that guarantee the respect for human rights. Minister, may I call upon you? Are we connected? Go ahead, ma'am.
Merci beaucoup pour la parole. Merci beaucoup. Je remercie les organisateurs de ce dialogue qui nous permet de répondre à une question: quel engagement stratégique pour une réforme du secteur de sécurité garantissant le respect des droits humains? Je vais compléter mon frère Kabengele, que je salue en passant. Pour la RDC, nous n'aurons pas beaucoup de choses. On ne va pas revenir sur les contextes, on va aller tout droit au but. Actuellement, nous, les organisations féminines, nous pensons qu'il y a lieu, franchement, d'entamer effectivement la décentralisation. Vous ne pouvez pas gérer un tel pays à partir de Kinshasa et laisser de côté les provinces, les localités, les collectivités, parce que c'est dans ce milieu-là où on retrouve des jeunes qui souvent ne sont pas, n'ont pas d'opportunité, n'ont pas d'opportunité d'études, d'emploi et qui se lancent dans l'activisme des groupes armés. Donc, il y a des efforts qui ont été consentis dans le cadre de la réforme du secteur de sécurité, mais tant qu'on ne vit pas la décentralisation, nous ne pouvons pas non plus parvenir à des résultats. Et d'ailleurs, notre structure commune qui est l'Union africaine avait déjà adopté la Charte africaine des valeurs et des principes de la décentralisation, de la gouvernance locale et du développement. Si du moins on suivait de près, on exigeait à tous les États, y compris la RDC, de vraiment d'investir dans la décentralisation, au moins la population peut être en mesure de résoudre ces problèmes. Ce ne sont pas tous les problèmes qu'on doit amener à Kinshasa ou au niveau central, mais il y a des conflits qui peuvent se résoudre au niveau local. Une autre stratégie que nous proposons à ce panel, c'est ces dialogues politiques entre les services de sécurité et les femmes et les jeunes. Souvent, nous nous regardons quand tu rencontres un militaire ou un policier, tu vois un danger, tu vois la mort, alors que lorsqu'on multiplie des rencontres, on analyse ensemble des problèmes, vous pouvez facilement arriver à des solutions. Donc, les dialogues politiques, nous estimons que c'est une stratégie qu'on peut asseoir pour garantir des services de sécurité beaucoup plus humains qui répondent aux besoins des communautés. Une troisième chose, je vais aller parler de recrutement. Vous voyez, dans notre armée, dans nos services de sécurité, au moins 98% constitués des hommes. Il n'y a pas de femmes. Il y a des efforts à faire dans la sensibilisation de l'ensemble de la population pour voir comment intégrer plus de femmes, plus de jeunes. Et là, ça nous aidera à trouver des solutions. Bien entendu, la gouvernance, ça reste un vrai problème. On peut avoir des millions, mais lorsqu'on ne travaille pas sur la justice, sur l'équité, sur les droits humains et tout, vous ne pouvez pas du tout arriver à de résultats. Chaque communauté ne peut pas avoir son propre groupe armé, pas du tout. La réforme des services de sécurité doit nous pousser à ce que l'ensemble de la population ait foi aux services de sécurité qui doivent être rendus comme de vrais services, qu'on peut rendre à une population. Voilà un peu de mots, mon intervention à ce sujet-là, mais sinon, je reste disposée à entrer dans les détails si vous le voulez.
Thank you very much, and especially making an important point, and for the context of the DRC, which is also a very large country, you add the dimension of the importance and the need for decentralization, and the need for women's organizations, the importance of political dialogue. So connecting very well in terms of the two contributions from the DRC. Now, there are a number of points that are being raised in the comments column, but one of the questions that goes to all the participants, the South Sudan, the Burundi, the Mali, and the DRC, are an appreciation from Jonathan Sandy for the comments, and the question of how involved are women and girls in the domestication and implementation. So let me just, sorry, I'm trying to read in here. How involved are women and girls in the domestication and implementation of laws and policies related to arms control, destruction and management, including domestication of arms trade treaty, to which AU and REX have committed to globally. So good question there to all of the participants in terms of how you are responding to this in your different areas. I believe there are some hands up, and I'm quickly looking to see if there is any hands up. I don't see hands up. Yes, is there anybody that's, yes, go ahead.
From the participants, someone by the name Nixon had his hands up. Nixon.
And by the participant on?
Nixon.
Nixon. Okay,
Yes.
Can I give Nixon a chance to raise a question? I ask all of you to raise your question briefly so we can get some final points here. Go ahead. Are you still with us?
Mr. Nixon, if you can unmute yourself and raise your points.
Go ahead. You need to unmute, Nixon.
No feedback.
Okay. No feedback. Okay, great stuff. So I want to then move on. And so what we have had now is the 4 case studies. And again, we're looking at, the consultation or the dialogue in terms of silencing the guns and what does this mean to African people. And we chose the 4 countries in terms of South Sudan, Burundi, DRC, and Mali, given that these countries have had challenges post our leaders making a commitment not to bequeath this continent of conflict to the future generations. And what we try to do with this dialogue here in terms of the different countries, in the case of South Sudan, we try to discuss and engage with women peace builders and deal with recommendations that they were making to the AU and IGAD, the international community and South Sudanese government on the nexus between security, reform, demobilization, disarmament, reintegration, and transitional justice as pathways to transition. And you will remember right at the beginning, the speakers there making a direct link in terms of governance and silencing the guns, and where governance plays a key role, bringing youth in it, not just as representation, but meaningful engagement. We then looked at the Burundi context, and here we were looking at providing recommendations that translate women and youth Burundian refugees and IDPs and returnees' concerns into the political, economic, and social reforms, and in particular, changing our lens to understand how do refugees reintegrate into communities that then become at peace, but being very conscientized about how refugees, IDPs continue to organize themselves about these issues and ensuring that they do have concrete space within the political, economic, and social reforms. And then the call for renewed commitment by the AU and the governments to the security sector reform process in terms of human security needs and the people of DRC. A key point and takeaway on the importance of decentralization of these efforts and speaking true to the issues and the objectives of this particular forum of what does it mean to the people, the African people. And then, of course, the conversation from Mali, again, where a number of the transitional requirements that need to be put in place are taking place as we speak, and requiring to lend support for those changes and aspirations that the women of Mali would like in terms of the meaningful participation. I want to now turn to the session that would move us to the way forward. But before we do that, there is one speaker, and if you bear and indulge with me, Edmund Yakani, I will not be able to give you the full time to make a full-on presentation, but I can give you 2 minutes to share some comments that you may have, or highlight comments for about 2 minutes in terms of what you had wanted to provide. Edmund, over to you. Edmund,
hello.
Unmute yourself. Hi.
Yes.
Go ahead. I'm going to give you 2 minutes, and I'm sorry for that pressure of time, but just to allow you to give you that comments that you needed to make.
Yeah, just it's useful technology. We are coping up with this visual, but
yes,
no, yeah, 2 minutes. 2 minutes. One, I would like to make sure that the discussion around the nexus or the linkages between DDR and SSR and TJ in conflict-prone states are very important, because DDR and TJ DDR and SSR are part of the TJ process. So in a country like South Sudan, if you ignore linking DDR and SSR to TJ, then the chances of you having no proper pathway of transitioning from violence to peace is very high. In Africa, ethnicity is being politicized, ethnicity is being marginalized. So if you ignore the DDR process, sometimes you need to disarm or need to demobilize one ethnic group over the others is very important. So my final comment is that whatever the debate is, we can't succeed in silencing the gun to meet the motto of creating conducive environment for development if we don't link DDR and SSR and TJ process as a one single process. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Edmund, for that very, very concrete point and a really critical point. The importance of linking DDR and that is demobilization, reintegration, and then security sector reform to transitional justice, and reminding us of the politicization of ethnicity and what that then means in a post-silencing the guns context and going forward. Really much appreciated, and I hope that if you have prepared a prepared paper that you can share it with the participants of this this session here. We are on 2:10 your time, 4:10 South Africa's time. We have run over 40 minutes, and I ask you to bear with us for another half an hour while we try to deal with session 2, the way forward, and do some closing remarks. So for session 2 on the way forward, I would like to call upon Dr. Martha Mutusi and Mr. Paul Vingi to give us the guidelines for how you will present this. Over to you, Dr. Mutusi.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can get.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair, and all protocols observed. So our task here is just to summarize the recommendations that emerged from the country presentations and to really identify concrete action plans going forward on each of their countries. So I'll start with South Sudan. Paul and myself, we split the 4 countries. We are taking 2 countries each. I'll start with South Sudan. I think one of the key issues that emerged from South Sudan is that we need to ensure the implementation of commitments made during the peace process, particularly during the revitalized agreement for the resolution of conflict in South Sudan, including the implementation of the 35% quota for women in decision making. The second issue that came about was that we need to engage youth in the national dialogue process and also in local level conflict resolution and prevention initiatives. We need to meaningfully engage with young people, eliciting their contributions to the peace process and to the post-conflict peace building agenda, and also ensure that young people in South Sudan are provided with opportunities to actively and meaningfully silence the guns. The third thing that emerged from South Sudan was that we need to recognize and support local and grassroots peace processes. And by this, we mean that we need to move beyond an elitist approach to peace, recognizing the multiple spaces where citizens can engage. And we need to link the IGAD process with track 2 and track 3 processes on the ground. The fourth recommendation was that we need to invest in conflict prevention through addressing structural drivers of conflict, particularly getting the governance equation right, and also ensuring that we demilitarize the politics in South Sudan. And the last recommendation from South Sudan says that we need to ensure that issues with DDR, security sector reform, and transitional justice are made more salient in the planning and implementation of the post-conflict peace-building agenda in South Sudan. And that also includes demobilizing and disarming young people, providing them with incentives for non-violence. I'll move to Burundi. In Burundi, a key issue that emerged was that the first one was that we need to engage with the government of Burundi to ensure that the resolutions and recommendations made by the UN, the AU, regional economic communities are adopted by the government and fully implemented, particularly those resolutions relating to human rights and the rights of refugees, to enable effective integration of refugees, returnees, and IDPs. The second recommendation from Burundi is that we need to address security threats for refugees, returnees, and IDPs. For refugees to return home, they need security guarantees. So we need to address security barriers that might militate against their decision to return and to stay. The third recommendation was that we need to promote social cohesion, tolerance by silencing the guns of political violence, discrimination, hate speech towards refugees, returnees, and IDPs. We also need to promote good governance and democratic rights for all at all times, especially during electoral periods. The fourth recommendation for Burundi was that we need to support women through promoting their access to land and also through supporting microfinance and economic empowerment processes so that we promote their human security and we address structural drivers of vulnerability. Fifth, we need to support organizations which are working on the ground because they have a bigger role to play in advocating for open civic spaces and advocating for the safe and return of IDPs, refugees, and returnees. And that includes supporting women and youth organizations who are doing amazing work on the ground. The last one is to create peace villages, which will bring in, which will integrate refugees, IDPs with local populations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martha, for that very succinct points raised there. Can I now call upon Paul?
Thank you, Pravina.
Mute yourselves. Thank you. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to give feedback and recommendations, key talking points that came from. I'll start with Mali. The first point on Mali was around reforming of the judiciary services. The second point was around strengthening of the fight against corruption. And the third one was on motion of effective implementation of UN resolution that include the 1325 on women and security and 2215 on the role of youth around peace and security. The fourth point was around acceleration of regional observations in terms of the two frameworks, 1325 and 2215. I will go to DRC. The first point on DRC was around enforcement of the implementation of the peace security cooperation framework for DRC and the region by AU, which is the guarantor of the framework in the year of silencing the guns. The second point was around pressing for security sector reforms in the DRC by CSOs, AU, UN, especially in the advent of the presence of the new administration of His Excellency Tshisekedi. The last point on DRC was around investment and strengthening of donor programs by government of DRC, CSU, AU, and funding organizations. And I think I left something on Mali. Good governance, redesigning, and political acceleration around electoral court processes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thank you so much for that, Paul and Martha. So this will now be put into a dialogue, an advocacy action plan for these countries and as an outcome of this initiative. So let me then take us then to the next section and this is to invite closing remarks from our three presenters here. And let me also thank the rapporteurs for an excellent job, because it's such a rich dialogue and so many points that get raised, and to be able to, and to be able, can you hear me? Okay, so to be able to raise them so succinctly that they become an dialogue advocacy action plan is quite beneficial to us taking the messages forward. So thank you so much, Dr. Martha Mutusi and Mr. Paul Vinigi. So let me go to the closing remarks then, and I would like to invite Ms. Kumba Ven, who's now the acting executive director of Femmes Africa Solidarite. Kumba. Have we dropped Kumba?
Merci beaucoup, Madame la modératrice. Merci, Pravina. Excellence, Madame l'envoyée spéciale, honorable représentant de la Commission de l'Union africaine, honorables invités experts, chers participants et partenaires, membres de Oxfam et du réseau GIMAC. Nous voilà effectivement arrivés au terme du dialogue multi-pays de haut niveau sur terre, faire les armes. Quelle perspective pour les Africains? Les études de cas ainsi que les présentations que nous avons entendues de nos partenaires, mais particulièrement des femmes leaders dans les pays ciblés, notamment le Sud-Soudan, le Burundi, le Mali et la RDC, confirment à juste titre la nécessité de continuer la réflexion et de consolider les actions de la population pour faire taire les armes dans nos communautés. Alors que nous terminons l'année dédiée à faire taire les armes, et malgré le fait que les femmes restent majoritairement écartées des politiques et des processus de prise de décision, nous avons vu tout à l'heure le film présenté, et nous l'avons entendu aussi dans nos débats, que nous sommes capables d'apporter des solutions durables pour la paix en Afrique. Et j'ai particulièrement été touchée par notre jeune intervenante, advocate du Soudan, qui nous a rappelé que le rôle tant important des jeunes dans la prise en charge des défis sécuritaires actuels. Et son vœu à ce que nous conjuguons nos efforts visant à renforcer la justice, la gouvernance, la paix et le développement. Alors que notre consultation se tient également durant les 16 jours d'activisme, nous devons également nous engager à faire taire toutes sortes de violences basées sur le genre et promouvoir l'élimination des causes socioculturelles et renforcer la cohésion sociale dans nos sociétés. Alors, Pravina, je sais que le temps est très court, donc permets-moi de conclure mon propos pour renouveler la solidarité, autant pour moi, la solidarité de Femmes Africa Solidarite et l'engagement du réseau GIMAC à œuvrer de sorte à ce que les femmes africaines et les jeunes demeurent un pilier central dans la consolidation de la paix en favorisant leur participation à la prise de décision et à faire entendre leur voix. Et à ce titre, je voudrais remercier le programme Afrique de Oxfam qui nous a permis d'initier ce premier dialogue dont les recommandations si riches vont être présentées et discutées en janvier prochain avec nos décideurs politiques et partenaires techniques pour que notre vision, la vision des femmes africaines, soit traduite dans toutes les conclusions de l'agenda post-2020. C'est l'occasion pour nous aussi de renouveler toute notre gratitude au bureau de l'envoyé spécial, également à la direction Femmes, Genre et Développement de l'Union africaine, qui ne ménage aucun effort pour nous soutenir dans notre mission. Je ne saurais terminer sans remercier encore une fois tous les panélistes tous les les intervenants à ce panel, nos partenaires. Et Pravina, merci beaucoup pour l'appui, nos interprètes, mais également l'équipe qui a été derrière pour mener à succès cette première consultation. Je vous remercie de votre aimable attention.
Thank you very much, Kumba, and for your kind words as well. Let me now call on Ms. Leah Mugerwa, and she's the Gender Justice and Inclusive Peace Lead at Oxfam International Africa Programme. And you've already heard in the opening comments how Leah is one of those that works behind the scenes on a number of these issues. So over to you, Leah, and welcome.
Thank you, Madam Pravina. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Representatives of the member states here present, African Union Commission representatives, the Office of the Special Envoy on Women, Peace and Security at the African Union, with whom we've received so much commendable support towards the multi-country high-level dialogue on silencing the guns. Femmes Africa Solidarite, FAS, and the GIMAC Secretariat, with whom we have organized this event with, representatives from the Danish Embassy, Ethiopia and Mali, all protocols observed. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, good evening. On behalf of Oxfam International Pan Africa Programme and the Liaison Office to the African Union, we are happy to have been part of today's critical conversations of the multi-country stakeholder high-level dialogue on silencing the guns, particularly that aims at bringing the perspectives from South Sudan, Burundi, DRC, and Mali on what silencing the guns means to African people. It has been a huge privilege to have real lived experiences and perspectives of the frontline women informing the high-level dialogue, as more often the frontline women often miss out from these crucial spaces, not only to present insights on what silencing the gun means to them, but also to voice their demands on what silencing the guns means in relation to their specific needs. The presence of the frontline women is a key priority and a point of success to our work at Oxfam Pan Africa Programme, as deliberately we seek to highlight women's agency in peace building and peacekeeping processes, while amplifying their voice towards shaping the women peace agenda that primarily speaks to their personal needs and their human rights. Further, we appreciate the role of the country teams and partners, panelists and speakers who have shaped these discussions through the numerous consultations that we have had, and on their efforts of commissioning and leading the country-specific research studies, and for sharing the findings on critical issues on the plight of the returnees, women in peace building, security sector reforms, demobilization, disarmament and reintegration, and transitional justice. More promising for us is how this high-level dialogue has demonstrated inclusivity to bring the perspective of the youth in silencing the guns, hence leaving no one behind. One of the most important principles of Oxfam has been upheld through our work in gender justice, as we always recognize that all stakeholders in society should have a role in defining and shaping peace to realize sustainable development. We appreciate the African Union, particularly Office of the Special Envoy on Women, Peace and Security, through the leadership of Madam Bineta Diop, FAS, GIMAC, and our development partners, the Danish Embassy, for supporting and working with us to realize the Women, Peace and Security agenda. It is our hope that we will collectively continue to work towards pushing together for the actualization of the country-specific national action plans on women, peace and security, and the perspectives on what silencing the guns means through the formulated key priorities and advocacy action plans from this dialogue to be addressed and actioned by the national policymakers, regional and sub-regional institutions during the second multi-country high-level dialogue in January 2021 and beyond. We also hope to continue our collaboration with the She Leads Peace campaign, an initiative steered by the leadership of the Special Envoy on Women, Peace and Security that strongly aligns and co-creates with Oxfam's I Matter campaign to realize as a way of realizing the implementation of UN Resolution 1325 on women, peace and security. We hereby would like to appreciate the support of the AU Office of Special Envoy on Women, Peace and Security, the Silencing the Gun Unit, the AUC, the AUWGGD, and the wonderful collaboration of Femmes Africa Solidarite and GIMAC, its members and partners, Oxfam country teams and partners from South Sudan, Burundi, DRC and Mali, Oxfam Horn, East and Central Africa Regional Platform, and the Pan Africa Programme for organizing this event. And on a special note, I would like to appreciate all of you who have taken time off your busy schedules to not only join us, but also share your incredible insights that have shaped the outcome of this event, and for joining us from across borders from Africa and beyond. I wish you all a wonderful day or evening and a pleasant weekend, as we hope that you will be part of the second dialogue of multi-country high-level dialogue on silencing the guns in January 2021. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leah, and for those very kind words, but also sketching the objectives and thanking us for that. I would like now to call upon my sister, Victoria Maloka, the Acting Director at the Women, Gender and Development Directorate, to give us the final closing remarks. Victoria.
Thank you very much, and greetings, Madam Moderator. It really is good to see you. Your Excellency, Madam Binta Diop, our Special Envoy on Women, Peace and Security, Madam Kumba Van, the Acting Executive Director of FAS, Madam Leah Mugehera, Gender Justice and Inclusive Peace Lead from the Oxfam International Pan Africa Programme, representatives of the AU member states who are here present, colleagues from the AUC. It really was good to see all of you. Excellencies, peace builders, human rights defenders, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, all protocols duly observed. Very, very good afternoon to you. I'm delighted to deliver these closing remarks at this first multi-country level dialogue on silencing the guns. What does it mean to African people? I'm grateful for this opportunity to serve, and for this really, I would like to heartily thank the conveners of this high-level dialogue, the Office of the Special Envoy, Madam Diop. I'm really grateful for this opportunity. GIMAC, you're always there for us. We are grateful. FAS, you're always working the journey with us. Oxfam, you were the very first organization that I gave a presentation to after joining the AU in 2015. So you're very special. And really, we are grateful that you extended this invitation to the Women, Gender and Development Directorate to be part of this very, very timely engagement. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the case studies that were presented this afternoon were, very, very eloquently presented, and each focused on what is considered to be a priority in each context to really contribute effectively to silencing the guns in those countries. I just want to give a few examples of what I picked from the meeting today. The case study of South Sudan really reminded us of the age-old dilemma of peace versus justice, and demonstrated the importance of a twin approach, as you can't have sustainable peace without justice. And it is, of course, impossible for justice to prevail in a context where there is no peace. And really, so balancing this is critical in silencing the guns. And in this context, in South Sudan, this is what silencing the guns meant for people of South Sudan, that twin approach. For Burundi, really, the case study shows us that we do not leave behind young people who are refugees, who are IDPs, and who are returnees, so that they themselves can define the solution for themselves. They can define how they want to return home, but also how they want to be retained at home. So really, the voices of young people, irrespective of their circumstances, are important in promoting peace and security, and in silencing the guns. And in this regard, and in this context of Burundi, this is what silencing the guns mean for young refugees, IDPs, and detainees of Burundi. The case study of the DRC demonstrates that the guns can never be effectively silenced for as long as people are not in the center of all the peace processes. In this regard, a security sector reform must be people-centered and must focus on human rights, human needs, and development of the people in the country. You remember what Brother Peter Kamalingin said in the morning, that we should make women, peace, and security a personal matter. And in the context of the DRC, this means giving a human dimension to security sector reform. So that even when we are talking all these big things about, you know, security this, security sector reform and so on, it is really the people that are at the center of it and whose consents must be taken into account. And really a people-centered security reform might also mean localizing the solutions so that they are owned by the people who are most affected. And Honorable Minister Mangilwa highlighted this very eloquently when she said, decentralize. So really a people-centered security sector reform that is decentralized to the people in the context of the DRC is what silencing the guns mean for the people of the DRC. The Mali case study is really a constant reminder of the resilience of the spirit of African women. Malian women are not only demanding to be at the table, but they're also saying we are fit to govern. Therefore, include us. In this regard, inclusivity, equal, full, and effective participation of women in peace building and political governance is what silencing the guns mean for Malian women. So really, Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, what I'm hearing as a running thread in all these case studies is a cry for proper inheritance for African people. No child, as you know, and Excellencies, my sisters and brothers, you know that when your child asks for fish, there's no way that you can give them a snake. When a child asks for bread, you will not give them a stone as a parent. So African people are asking for peace as their inheritance and not war. So really this is what silencing the guns mean for African people. And we can simply say #peace, my inheritance. This is at the heart, the very core of the silencing the gun vision, to ensure that Africa does not bequeath to its people a conflict-ridden continent. The key priorities and advocacy action plans that have been identified in this dialogue will really help policymakers to develop and implement responses and solutions that will contribute in effectually silencing the guns in Africa. And really in closing, I would like to reaffirm the commitment of the Women, Gender and Development Directorate of the African Union Commission to continue to partner with you. We look forward to receiving the outcomes of the dialogue so that we can integrate them in our engagement with AU policy organs. And really on this note, and as Madam Diop mentioned earlier on, I'm happy to report that the AU ministers in charge of gender and women's affairs met last week Friday on 27th November 2020. Amongst others, they considered the report of the AU Women, Peace and Security Agenda, including the outcomes of the first Africa Forum on Women, Peace and Security. Ministers took a decision to fully support the implementation of our call to action, including some of the proposals that were made around convening a peace forum for Africa led by African women and attended and supported by African heads of state and government. So in this regard, you can be confident that what comes out of here will see will chart a very good road and end up where it should end in the policy organs of the AUC. Really, and as this is the end of the year, and I may not have an opportunity to see you again, let me use this time to congratulate all of you for the hard work that you have done throughout 2020, and really especially to contribute in bringing peace to Africa despite the COVID-19 pandemic. You really, really did a fantastic job. You managed to push African women's agenda for peace and security. And today's high-level dialogue is very much a testament to that. And really, I wish you a restful festive season for those who will be taking a break, and a Merry Christmas for those who observe the Christian calendar, and a very blessed and prosperous and fantastic 2021. God bless you all and peace. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Victoria Maloka, and the support that we often get in terms of the AU Gender Directorate and for development as well. So with that, colleagues, friends, representatives of the African Union, representatives of the countries that have presented case studies, the Acting Director of FAS, the AU Gender Directorate, Acting Director, as well as Oxfam and all of the colleagues here, the Special Envoy for Women, Peace and Security. Thank you very, very much. And that brings us to the end of this high level and the multi-country high-level dialogue on silencing the guns. I know Elisa wants a group picture, so I'll ask you